go ahead and get started then. Okay, let's see. First on the docket here, let's see. You're representing John, aren't you?
Yes, I'm Richard Emerson.
What's your name?
Richard Emerson.
Okay, Bridger.
Richard.
Oh, I'm sorry, Richard.
I said Richard. I've been called worse.
My wife says I got to have hearing aids, so. Why don't we turn the time over to you and let you kind of, so to bring everybody up to speed a little bit, we've been working on this idea of an aquifer storage and recovery site. The area, I think, Sean, did you
Yeah,
make
you mind
a,
scrolling down to the map?
go down there to the map and just kind of show the area and so the general, the idea. We've applied for this,
No, I don't think so.
let's see, oh, shoot. Do we not have the map there?
Yeah, it's there.
Oh, there's not a map. There wasn't a map on it. I looked at it.
I didn't see it.
Anyway, while Cynthia's trying to bring that up, the idea behind this is to, we all know the Cedar Ridge well up there, and it sort of was supposed to produce really well, never ended up producing really well. We'll have Richard sort of go through this with us and talk about the well and the capture area that we're going to be putting the water into. But the idea is we have all this water going into the Bear River right now from the springs, just going into the Bear River. It's our water. And so the idea would be to reverse and pump the water from the springs back up into the Cedar Ridge well. And then we would fill that Cedar Ridge well up through the off season and then have the water stored there and access it during the high demand season. So essentially what we're doing is we're taking all that good water from the springs, we're storing it right there. So that's sort of the idea. We have the springs right there at on the left in the light blue. And then what we be doing is just reversing the process. The pipe is already there, and we would reverse the process back on up to the Cedar Ridge well, and there's about 250 feet of 12-inch line that we would have to put in and all this kind of thing. Anyway, we've applied for the grant, and hopefully we'll be successful with it, but this will be a good way. It's a foreshore thing because we know we have the water going into the Bear River, the spring water. All we're doing is capturing it and returning it to Cedar Ridge. So with that introduction, Richard, we'll kind of turn the time over to you.
Okay, thank you. So I was brought in last year to do a hydrologic study of the area to find potential new targets for you guys for a well. And it quickly became apparent that there's not a lot out there. It would be strictly exploration, maybe up on the mountain fronts. But also what popped out to me really quickly was the drawdown around the Cedar Ridge area. You've seen 40 plus feet over a pretty big area of aquifer decline since the 80s. And it's a very good aquifer short term. Not very good long term, as you guys know. It seems to not sustain high pump rates over the summer. So that area where the water quickly comes out, you can also quickly put it back in. So in the winter months, you've got all that area of decline where you could potentially re-inject your spring water. And some of you may be involved maybe with or know of the Brigham City ASR program that they put in place. And that's been, from my understanding, quite successful. John was involved with that, and he was telling me typically by August they've depleted their injection water that they put in over the winter, and they start to see that hard mineralized manganese water coming back in around August. It's a different aquifer, but I would expect we'd see similar results here. So
It's a good basin. It's a good bull to, I guess, without Superman vision,
Right,
sort of a thing. We think that it's a pretty good bowl to be putting this
correct.
water into, that it won't just flow in, return back to the rivers.
Some of it will. You're going to get some returns. I assume you have good flow records on your springs. So you'd want to continue that and see, how much, if it does increase. The timing of that, I ran some just kind of back of the envelope models, and at the end of about a 200-day injection period, you see about a foot increase of water level to the springs down at the river. What that equates to in flow is anyone's guess. It's hard to tell. So,
In hydrological terminology, is it it's not a sieve sort of a thing, this basin. It's,
you
I
could
read somewhere where you kind of described the type of a format that they're, what the soil profile, the profile of the underneath is.
So there's two theories on this little area. One is that, so we've got these faults that have offset and you've created this graben. So you've got, the basin fault going up to the Wellsville Mountains. That's a pretty extensive fault. And then out towards the valley, you potentially have another fault and it creates a wedge, a V shape. And that could be your, your sponge, I guess, that holds all the water there. And the other theory would be that we have these thick gravels coming off the mountain, and then they pinch out and get really thin as they get towards the valley, and then you've got these volcanic and clays that don't transmit water, and then that forces it out to the springs. So your aquifer is just not thick enough to support wells as you get out to the valley. They're really shallow. So.
Do you have any questions for?
How much is this gonna cost us to pump water from our spring up there? I mean,
You have a cost estimate, Sean?
Yeah, there was a cost estimate.
It's the next page down.
Yep.
It's not the operational, that's just the capital.
the capital to put it together to pump it up there.
The pumping,
That's a one-time cost versus
Yeah.
Yeah.
an ongoing.
And then we have the,
Electricity.
hopefully the BRAG grant, either CDBG grant, that will cover about 250,000 of that.
Of this one-time cost.
That's through till August.
But the real question I'm asking is it a lot of money to pump that water up there on an annual basis? Just
Can you check
electricity,
the
isn't
pumping
it?
costs? I think we're up to about 140, 150 in pumping costs.
I see
Might give
them.
you some idea, if we added 6 months. And I think the idea is Paul said that he would watch the SCADA and the levels so we can see how much it's rising. And when it gets to a point that it doesn't continue to rise, the thought is that he would shut it off.
This aquifer we're talking about, is the other well that's down there on the subdivision that we purchased a while back? Is that-
Cedar Ridge?
Yeah, Cedar Ridge, is that part of the same aquifer?
That's the one we're planning to put it into.
Oh, I thought it was over here just above Deweyville.
No,
that we were
If you go
pumping
back to
down.
that map, go back to that map, Cynthia.
springs down by the river.
Down where we
Back up.
were.
Yeah.
So that you can see the Cedar Ridge subdivision right there, and the well is just right to the kind of the southeast corner of that.
Okay,
And that's where we'd pump the water from the springs through the existing lines on up into the well. All we're doing is just reversing the flow of the water up to the well instead of down from the spring.
Just from the reservoir to the well, because we're already pumping from the springs up to the reservoir.
that was my, because we can watch a well.
Oh, yeah.
The
Yeah,
other,
you're right.
the other place where I thought we were gonna go with it, you've got all the other towns up there pumping water, so it'd be really hard to see what was going on.
And we're not the only one that uses the Cedar Ridge well, right?
That little subdivision right there.
Subdivision does.
That's as far as it goes. It don't tie back into the district there, right? Didn't think so.
Year to date, we've spent $84,600 in the water fund, pumping water.
What's the budget? Do you
The budget's 140,000. That's for all of,
We should
Water
still
pumping.
stay within the budget with that.
Is there a projected pumping rate or injection rate that you guys have in mind?
Chris could probably, Paul or Chris could probably answer that for you.
What was that?
The injection rate, how much water do you have to put in maximum?
We were looking at 200 to 300 gallons a minute.
Okay. I did calculate it at 300 gallons a minute injection, so it seems reasonable.
that it would hold that much water? Is that when you say reasonable?
I think so, yeah.
So there's a little section right there, that 250 feet. I don't know, I think it's called an atmospheric box. Apparently they're kind of a breather box right there that we got and there's 250 feet of line right there, that little red area.
That's where Gardner Spring tied in to the line. So it pumps into a box there where just gravity flows from there. So we have to connect a pressure line back up to above that box to make this work.
This really shouldn't have any impact on what we're putting back into the Bear River because we're just pumping it back up. 300 gallons per minute's not going to really affect that much that's still being dumped into the river, right?
It'll be minimal. I mean,
Yeah.
it's during the winter time.
Yeah.
During the winter time, we'll be taking water we're not taking now.
Right. And so there's really no one in the winter that utilizes that water.
No.
It just goes, well, I shouldn't say just, but doesn't it end up in the Great Salt Lake area?
Yes.
Eventually, yeah.
Okay, so that's, okay. So eventually this will pump back up, but it will still end up out there.
We do have our permit or rights, I don't know.
Water rights.
Water rights. Our water rights are 12 months, 12 month, it's a year-round water right. So it, like, that water is just ours going into the river right now, so.
I like it.
Anyway, this would be, one way of capturing good, high-quality spring, water that we can save and use during high demand periods and that kind of thing. And at a relatively, especially with the grant, it should be a relatively inexpensive way of capturing this water, so
How big is the grant, you say?
250. You have any other questions for Richard? Well, we got him here. I got all kind. So can you give us a little rundown, while we got a few minutes? Can you give us a little rundown on what your feelings are as far as potential other sites? I think you did sort of a survey of different potential areas where we could go find water, hopefully. Could you give us a little rundown on that?
Sure. I was mostly looking at the fault zone up on the bench. My concern up there is that you start pulling water from the bedrock aquifer, and that aquifer is likely feeding your springs and everybody else's springs along the front. So you run into potential impairment issues when you start drilling wells up there that might impact other users. The basin is probably off limits. The deeper you go, the poorer the water quality, and it's pretty shallow. The gravel aquifer is quite shallow. That Cedar Ridge aquifer really stood out as unique. Why it dewaters so quickly, I think it's just a small aquifer that just has limited extent. It's not getting a lot of recharge, even though the well produces. So if you can get more water into that, I think that is your best bet.
We attended a meeting last night with the Department of Natural Resources, and apparently the governor they've more or less closed any new water rights in this, in this basin right here. But existing water rights, it was just kind of a surprise to me, if you've got a water right, you can still exercise that water right. Is that, did I understand that
I
right?
believe that's correct. I was curious how that would play out too. I only saw it on the news, so if you attended a meeting, you'd probably be more up on the current.
Well, Chris was there as
That-
well. And
They
is
didn't have
that,
a lot of answers.
Yeah.
They said it was close to new appropriation, but yeah, in fact, existing applications were still gonna be
Yeah.
processed.
Anything that was filed before the governor's proclamation
Yeah.
will be honored and evaluated. So anything that's outstanding, and even if it's undeveloped, can still be developed with what they're anticipating in the policy.
You know, for, private individuals and commercial and that type of stuff, but would a municipal hold a different, it would not. I've always wondered that.
At this point, the advantage you guys have is you have public water supplier protections, and so you don't have to develop your water sources within 7 years.
Our existing rights.
And so.
All the restrictions apply to new rights too. Sorry, Trevor.
No, go ahead,
I was just saying it applies to new rights. The restrictions apply to new rights for everybody.
Including municipals.
Everybody, yeah, including municipalities.
See, that's 432,000 gallons a day. If my zeros are all in the right place, 300 gallons a minute
That you'd be pumping up there.
would be putting in back into that at 300,
how many gallons in an acre foot?
3.8 million.
0.6 times
I don't work in gallons.
gallons per minute.
How many? Well, I guess it's not that important right now, but, all right, well, thank you. I appreciate you coming up and spending some time with us.
Sure.
And answering our questions, and we're hoping that this will, we can move forward, and hopefully this will be something we can do this summer and get it up and going, and we're excited about it.
All right, good. Yeah, it's all the rage right now. Logan did one.
All the rage, huh?
Brigham City did theirs, so yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, Richard. Do you have any other comments or anything for us?
I don't think so. Thanks for listening to me, and I'll be involved with Chris on the permitting for this
Okay.
going forward. So
All right.
Mr. Mayor, could I just ask, is there any
Sure.
issues that you foresee with permitting?
we've done the hydrogeologic background. My part should be fairly straightforward. I'm a small part. Chris will be doing the heavy lifting on this for the most part. So
Okay.
But I guess that's why I brought it up about, there shouldn't be any, we already have the water appropriation for this water. There should not be any issues arise from,
Water rights issues, right? Is that what you're asking about?
yeah,
That's my understanding.
okay.
There is some,
You what?
talk to this regional engineer after what we found yesterday. But yeah, we have the water rights for the water that we want to use. I've not done the ASR stuff before. I don't know. It's not a new right though that we need. It's just a permit, right? Is that correct?
correct. Yeah, it's my understanding. That's the ones I've been involved with are that way. We aren't accessing new water rights. So
But a lot of things are going crazy with water in the state right now.
Yes,
We
they
don't
are.
know that, but
Yeah. Well, it was kind of, you listen to it and you think, oh yeah, we're okay. And then you listen a little longer and you think, oh man, I'm not sure if we're okay or not. So that's how the meeting went last night. All right. Well, thank you. Appreciate you coming in and educating us.
all right.
All right, Trevor. We need to,
I don't have a phone until
what
what
are-
was the final answer?
I broke mine. So I'm waiting on the new one.
4,000 gallons
in an acre foot?
per day.
I'll send you an email
It's,
and give you a backup number.
325,000 gallons.
Sounds good. Thanks.
And some change.
And change, okay. Okay, we've invited Trevor Nielsen from the River Canal Company to come and give us a report on where we're at as far as, we're all familiar with the equalization basins that, the two equalization basins that we're contemplating. Trevor's going to kind of give us an update on what we need to do there, and also this grant that is in the works we keep hearing about, but nothing seems to ever happen with it. It just takes time. It's federal money, I guess. It's just the way it is. Anyway, Trevor, we'll go ahead and just turn the time over to you, and then we'll want to make sure we leave enough time that we can ask questions and so forth when we get done.
Members of the council and Mr. Chairman, thank you for the invitation today. So I've prepared a few things, but my intention today is to answer your questions. So at any point in my presentation, you want to interrupt, by all means, this is your time. How much time, when would you like me to end, Mr.
Well,
Chairman?
we've got some time. Curtis was going to go through, is that going to be in the regular session?
I think we can do it is planned for the regular session.
Okay, so we've got lots of time.
Okay, so cut me off when you want me to be done then.
All right.
Okay, so most of us know the Bear River Canal Company is the largest water system in Box Elder County. 126 miles of canal, diverting 403,000 gallons per minute from May 1 until October 31 each year, delivering to 68,000 acres of highly productive farm ground. And we are the largest irrigation company in the state of Utah. And you guys are one of our larger shareholders. So one of the things that's unique about our system is that we do a headgate turn schedule. So every single share is scheduled down to the minute every single week on how much water is given out. So this is an example schedule of different farmers and homeowners on this particular gate in Fielding. And you can see even our lease pool designated there on the far right on people who've taken their water out to put into our lease pool. And then it doesn't look like there's a leasee on here, but that's an example. Now, the city's a little bit unique in that they have these full-time head gates. So you can see there's just one turn, and it has all the shares in there, and there are 180 hours in a week. So that allows you to go Monday at 6:45 a.m. to the next Monday at 6:45 a.m., giving you that on-demand desired extraction that you need for your secondary system. So most of you know that there were historically two service areas that have been in service for quite some time, one located on the west side of Liberty Foods and the other at Jenny Stevens Park, known as Service Areas 1 and Service Areas 2. And then in the last couple of years, the city's added 3 additional stations. Station 3 down by a retention basin in the middle of town, Station 4 down near Rocket Road, and then Station 5 up on 10th North and 10th West to service the area over by the high school. And then Service Area 9 is anticipated to come online in the next few years to service the area that's on the east side of the Bear River, noted in the red pump, the red color there on the right side, excuse my French. So, one of the issues that we've run into is that the bylaws of the canal company require that you use your water within your scheduled limits. So time's pretty something that people are used to, okay, I only have this much time, but the second limitation is flow, because you're only allowed so much water per week, which then calculates to your total 4 acre-feet per share amount per year, right? But because our flow from the dam is 900 CFS, or that 403,000 gallons per minute, we actually issue it on that flow basis so that we can equitably issue to everyone. Now, the issue that the city has is that as good stewards of the water, your citizens irrigate a lot at night and don't irrigate a lot in the middle of the day. Now, without a storage facility, the problem is that in the middle of the night, you're using everything that you can, and then in the middle of the day, the rest of it's just going downstream. And so what's happened is that the city management has done a good job of utilizing the resources that you've made available to them, but you are having to supplement because it's a use it or lose it situation without a storage pond. So this is a good example here. This is the pump station next to over by West Liberty Foods, you can see that every day it goes clear up and every night it goes clear down. And, you know, if you could capture that and hold that, you would have plenty of water. But what you're having to do is essentially supplement your your number of shares so that you can hit your peak amount. And you're familiar with that with the culinary system. It's all about that peak day use. And so we really haven't gotten past that peak day use problem without user basins. Now, for this particular station, the dark blue line is the allowed extraction. So you can see for most of the time you are in compliance, but regularly for maybe 20 minutes to maybe 2 hours a night, you are exceeding your extractions. It's a little more prominent when we move over to the Jenny Stevens Park subdivision. You can see here that the dark line is the limitation, and for most of, it ends up being 26% of the time the city is not in compliance with the Bear River Canal Company bylaws. Now, the good thing about this is Paul and I work together on this to kind of nail this down and get this figured out, and we're going to make he's making some operational changes to address this issue. The big issue with this pump station is the school and the park irrigate at the same time, so that makes your peak all the more. And so if they'll rotate days, then you have half the peak that rotates on each day. And so they're hopeful that that's successful. This is pump station 3. If it'll move over, give it a second. And you can see this pump station for service area 3 is well under its threshold. Pump station, I'm gonna move through to 4 here real quick. Sorry, the slideshow is a little slow because there's a lot of data points. Come on. Service Area 4 was only put in production for a short period at the end of the season, and Service Area 5 was just pressure tested. And so how this ended up working out for the season is shown in this. Oh, getting excited here.
Oh, yeah.
There we go. Is shown in this graphic here. Your total allowed extraction in the dark green line, your total actual usage in the green line. So in the light green. And so on the whole, the city has not violated its overall allocation. However, to be specific and to be treated the same as any other shareholder, each of the stations need to show something more similar to this where we're not peaking over that allowed amount. And so Paul and I have adjusted the scheduling at the canal company, and we've had to utilize all of the shares that are currently owned by the city to address the peak amount. So for the city to continue to grow, to install that additional pump station, let me get back to, you know what I'm going to do, there it goes. It is, I've never had it do this before. That's all kinds of exciting. So for the city to continue to develop and to put a pond on the East Canal, in order for there to be sufficient shares for that, the pond on the Central Canal does need to be built. It'll free up some shares that are currently trying to deal with that peak usage and allow them to be transferred to the other canal for usage in that new pond. It allows you to deal with using your water based on volume rather than flow. Now, the basic idea of what we're trying to accomplish is so how the equalization basins work, and I guess I'm going to go off this one. You can see the individual pumping stations, and you can see these are where the the little squiggly lines are where those basins are going to be installed. So essentially down through town, what the automated gate below the ponds will do is it will call each of these stations and ask it what it's pumping. And then it will release from the canal what those stations are pumping, and then all of your owned water will go into that pond. So you gather it all up in the pond and you only release back what you actually use. And so the canal company has an automated gate that's shown right at the top that will cut the flow going the west direction to adjust for the service area 1. And then you guys will have automated gates on these 2 ponds shown here that will take care of equalizing it off. So you're essentially taking your water early and then replacing it back. Does that make sense? So
You said the other day that this is kind of a unique thing, that the city has this, the idea of the basins, and, we sort of can store our water and release it. Can you explain that to me? I thought that was pretty fascinating when how the city sort of has this, we own the water in the basin, in those equalization basins. Am I thinking right here?
yeah, so just like a farmer, rather than pouring your water out on the field, you're putting it into a storage area, and then we just add up what you're using and you make the canal whole. And the advantage of that is it makes the canal run dead steady, because the issue that we're seeing is shown in this graphic here. The effects are not seen up in Tree Mountain City, but further down at these targets in red at the ends of our canal. And this is one of the automated gates we installed 2 years ago that shows what happens on the end of the canal system as we, I'm sorry, it keeps cutting off the edges. That's just not a great deal. But you can see that it rolls up and down, and the labels on the right side there says CFS. The top bar would be 20 CFS, and obviously the bottom 0. So the increments are 5 CFS, or about 2,500 gallons per minute. And so it does cause some seesawing effect in our system. Now, Bear River Canal Company, we're not claiming that we've always run completely smooth either. We do try to minimize the ups and downs in our system, and we actually have a computer that program that optimizes that. It goes through and looks at the trillions of possible combinations of how we could run the gates, and it tries to make it so that the canal itself runs dead steady, because that's the key, is if you can run it steady and everyone takes their turn on time, at the end you don't have this occur. So we're also taking some preparations ourselves. We just got several $1 million worth of grants to continue to develop this system, and we have a pond ourselves that we're putting into service below Procter & Gamble. So at the end of this canal, we'll essentially put extra water into the central canal system, take it out at this location, bring it across, and put it into this 20-acre pond. We have about 120 acre-feet of storage there, and then it will release to this canal as it needs it. So we send extra down this, hold it when we have extra available, and then when this canal goes deficit, we replace it back that other direction. And then another thing that we are doing with this is eventually our irrigation system will be autonomous. I just want to take a minute or two to show you guys, we're gonna have to have an internet connection. What we are,
So we're trying to go from the Stone Age to the Jetsons.
it has come with some, fairly
Some
wicked learning
headaches
curve.
and some growing pains, but what doesn't? So we're trying to, I'm sure the city has the same problem. You can't find people that want to work 24/7 anymore.
At MyDoorSign.com, we make signs that do all sorts of things. They help organize your space. They give people...
Here we go.
Rubicon's Total Channel Control automatically manages every aspect of canal operation to precisely measure and control the supply of irrigation water. By using a combination of feedback and feed-forward control, Total Channel Control minimizes fluctuations in canal water levels, ensuring a consistent supply to all farms. Customers also benefit from near on-demand service and the flexibility of ordering their water online or over the phone. When an order is made, software automatically checks if the customer has sufficient allocation and whether the order can be delivered within capacity constraints. The order is then sent to the customer's turnout. It automatically opens at the requested time and continually adjusts to deliver the ordered flow rate. Upstream flume gates anticipate the downstream demand using feed-forward control. And along with real-time level and flow information, continuously adjust to maintain water levels immediately downstream. As each regulator adjusts to maintain the water level in its downstream pool, upstream regulators in turn adjust right through to the reservoir. This means that only the exact amount of water required is drawn from the reservoir, eliminating the spills and wastage that plague traditional irrigation infrastructure. Total channel control, changing the way the world irrigates.
You're gonna put those on all gates on farmers too?
So we
Cool.
have about 150 check structures, and then 530 different points of diversion. And we aren't going to use that specific gate you saw there for the individual turnouts, but the main canal gates you will see. So if you guys wanted to see one that we've already put in, there's one over just south of the crossroads that's been installed last spring on that drop that's just south of there. And then there's also one up behind behind McDonald's. Malto Mill, that's
On the
one
head of Central.
that we installed this last year, and we'll be putting a couple more in this year, but we estimate the price to be somewhere between $7 and $9 million of overall investment, and we're well on our way to getting that done. So we wanted to communicate that we are not just asking the city to make a big lift, it's part of an overall effort that we're making. And these automated gates that will release from your ponds tie into this system specifically so that we can work synergistically. So part of what we wanted to communicate today and what was communicated to us by staff was that you're thinking hard about installing the pond on the Central Canal. We do feel that that will help operationally, and I'm sure you guys have experienced some of the political I shouldn't swear, but anyway.
Mayhem.
Yes, that has come from people that don't understand what we're trying to accomplish here. And so we think that it's also a good political move for both organizations. We understand that it is difficult where especially you're the first organization in our area to try to do a secondary system, and you're the first organization that I know of that has used the canal essentially as the trunk line for your secondary system. So there are some learning curves and some bumps along the way. We appreciate your patience and we appreciate your willingness to stay in compliance with the bylaws as we have hit these unexpected bumps. So we'd like to be a good neighbor. We're sorry sometimes if we get in a little bit of a tussle with you guys, but we'd like to work through this with you, and we would encourage you to make those investments because, I mean, as you've just previously discussed, culinary water is at a premium in our area, and so the more we can switch to other sources that perhaps are lower quality to do our outdoor watering certainly is a better solution for you as a municipality.
So, with our current plan, and you have all those stations up there, is this all the ponds we're gonna need
So
for now?
my understanding is that, and we're talking a while away, there will be one more beyond this up on the mountain to service the growth area up, I don't know what you guys call it, but the hill where the two freeways split, that part of town.
Radio Hill.
Leo Hill.
What canal is that, the West Canal?
Yeah, so there may need to be a basin put up there, but that's service area 13 or 12.
13's the hillside, one's down below. I don't remember how I divided them all up, but 13 was the hillside.
But at the time it was made, I think the city didn't necessarily think that we were going to grow as fast as you are. So when that happens is on your timetable. But we have to have one for each canal because we can't necessarily at this point adjust what's on Central by what we have in the East Canal. Now, once we have this total channel control system in there, that does give us a lot more flexibility. But we think the growth is going to outrun us as an operating system. And we won't have it in before you guys as customers are going to need it. The other thing is the bylaws do require a fairly static extraction. Now, you aren't the only one with, they call them variable speed pumps, VFDs, or variable frequency drive pumps. The difference though between a pivot, say, and your system is that your system can go from full load to nothing in just a few cycles. So the cycle on these is 15 minutes is every time we pick a reading up. And 3 or 4 cycles you go from full load to empty. Whereas a pivot, they can go from full load to empty as well, but it's static. And what I mean by that is a farmer goes and puts his set on, like he sets up his sprinklers or he turns on his pivot, and it'll stay at that same rough flow rate for the 12 hours that he lets it go. Whereas the city is rolling up and down and up and down. So it's a little bit different. And that's why we've had to adjust how we look at it. And, you know, it's made us also think about those type of deliveries. Do we need to make an adjustment on that? We have high hopes in this total channel control system that'll help address the overall macro problems, but we'll see what happens.
So Trevor, and I want you to understand too that we are concerned about the canal water and understand. I mean, I grew up in South Fremont and I personally have witnessed fights, you know, over the water. I mean, you understand what I'm saying. So, you know, we're concerned too at the same time, but sitting on this side of the fence now, where, you know, a budget is a budget. And when you're talking $2 million to create a holding pond, you made mention that you had worked with Paul and you shifted shares around to the Central Canal and that type of stuff so that we wouldn't be causing problems when we peaked over the agreement. Can we still continue trying to do that kind of stuff to save money and not putting another holding pond in?
So, so technically last year the city was in violation. They had 2 pump stations that went overstream. Now the one was only 3% of the time, so that's kind of like, well, we just need to make a minor adjustment. The other was 26% of the time. So that is something that needs to be adjusted.
That's number 2.
Yeah, Station 2. So those are the changes that Paul and I made. We took your remaining shares out of the lease pool and we put them in there. We also worked with the school district on rearranging their shares because the school is one of the main pullers on that Jenny Stevens Park pump station. And we tried to come up with what we think is the best plan. Now, if his operational adjustments don't work, Pumping Station 2 will be in violation of the bylaws again. However, I have hopes that they will. And so my reasonable estimation is that unless you were to purchase a significant block of shares, you are going to have enough water for 2023, but I would not anticipate that for 2024.
Without the basin.
Yeah, because
Correct.
the basin, like I said, lets you take all the midday water you're foregoing right now and stack it up and use it later.
So is there any other alternative ideas out there? Because, you know, we use our water at night and that's conservancy practices. That's what we've been teaching everybody. Should we be telling people to water during the day so that we don't peak out at night?
Well, that's certainly operation. Water's a funny thing. It makes you do things that don't make sense, and this is one of those. Because you don't have storage, you're wanting to use it when you have it. Same thing happens in Sanpete County because they don't have storage. They irrigate in like the first week of March, and I drive through there and I'm like, oh my gosh, what are you guys doing? You're just killing your hay. But they don't have storage. So I wouldn't encourage you guys to do something that you know is not in the public interest, especially with the Great Salt Lake interest watching us as closely as they are. But storage is expensive, and there's just no way around that. Now, maybe to circle back around to the grants and how we've ended up where we're at. And am I okay on time still? I don't want to...
Yeah, we're good.
Okay. So, the program that we have invited the city to be part of is called PL 566, Public Law 566. And it's a floodwater program. But they realized after a few years, the federal government, that the program wasn't being utilized because there just wasn't that much flood need. So they allowed it to be used for agricultural use, and then it eventually got expanded into about every facet of water use with the exception of stormwater. And municipal. Now, ironically, because you're not a first-class county, you're actually considered agricultural use under this program. So your cost share for anything that you install that's not flood-related is 75% federal, 25% out of pocket, or well, you can get your match from anywhere that's not federal. So there isn't a better grant program out there. The problem is it's very slow. So the canal company we wish that well, when I started, our goal was to be installing our project this next spring. And we just have been slowed down by the fact that the program is saturated right now. So we do apologize for that, but when the city and the canal company negotiated in good faith, we thought it was fairly certain that by 2025 we would be able to install this, and maybe even earlier. But now it's looking more like at least 24 months from today, more likely 36 to 48 months. The reason is the environmental process takes time. So I did sign the contract documents 2 weeks ago, and the engineers will start to work with your engineering staff on moving this forward. But as fast as the city is growing, even at the 24-month window, I don't see us being able to service the city's needs with the number of shares that they have, like I said, beyond the 2023 season. So we've been hit from both directions, for which neither of us could really anticipate. The slowness of the federal government, which I guess we should have expected Uncle Sam to take his time, but also the speed of growth. Now, if the economy collapses, which, I mean, my background, I have a master's degree in applied economics. In the next 12 months, it's fairly likely that there's going to be a softening of the market. We've already seen that in the slowing down of building permits. Maybe the city will be fine. I don't anticipate Uncle Sam's going to get any faster, though. So we were hopeful that the Central Canal and the East Canal Pond could be installed using PL 566 funds, and then depending on what your engineer would recommend, perhaps the upper basin could be installed, because you have a 10-year window once you get the clearance. So that's how we are where we're at. And we certainly are willing to honor our commitment that we made. We talked about this the board talked about this at our last board meeting. We made a commitment that you could wait till 2025 if that was absolutely what the city needed to see. But we can't approve another storage basin until there's reason to believe that there's, another pump station on the east side of the Bear River, on the east side of the Malad River, until we can reasonably believe that there's going to be shares to be put in there and the existing system is operating within the constraints of the bylaws. So, sorry, that was kind of a long answer, but hopefully that.
So you're watching with us. I mean, if it's not necessary versus you're just requiring it, we're watching to see if we're actually going to need to put a holding pond in.
Well, the holding ponds are required in accordance with the motions made by the board of directors. The reason is in the Weaver Basin area, they haven't done as good a job of doing this, and it has caused delivery issues for other users. So the policy of the company is that any new pump station that's put into the canal system requires a storage basin. So for instance, Elwood City came in yesterday. They're in the process of installing their first secondary station. And they're actually taking kind of the opposite end of the spectrum from you guys. They're going to take it from the canal over to a pond that is in the middle of their station areas. And that's where they're going to stack it, and they're going to put their pumps inside their pumps. You can see how that is a simpler system, but they're paying for trunk line. So it's trade-offs of having to kind of have the automation and things that we talked about and the communication systems in place versus having to pay for the trunk line to get it to a storage basin.
Question, you had mentioned that when you get this automation system in place, that will not make our holding ponds obsolete.
No, so part of the magic of this system is that each of those ponds gets tuned, and it uses each of those little ponds between the gates like little storage reservoirs. And so, I mean, it's hosted by Amazon services. I mean, this thing is flipping 3 and 4 terabytes of data a day, calculating what's the best way to move the water. I mean, initial installation is extremely expensive of the computer system. So what it'll do is it'll use your ponds as part of the equation. And, depending on how you guys would like it utilized, we can run it independent of our system, or we can run it integrated. It's your water, you can decide how you want to do it.
That was kind of a question I guess I have is, the head gates and that kind of thing and getting them ordered. We just talked to Paul earlier today and he's thinking that maybe we ought to get those head gates ordered right away so that, you get on the list and everything. But those head gates that we're talking about, that's part of this system that you're talking, that's part of that system, isn't it?
It can communicate, with what we're putting in place.
So in fact, that's kind of what you said. It doesn't make any sense unless it's tied into your system somehow so that it knows when those deficits are, when the surpluses are, and so fill and drain as needed, sort of a thing.
Yeah.
Could we ever put enough in there you wanted to buy water from us, from our shares? Just kidding. We couldn't ever, that could be a possibility though, right?
We've never explored a spot market, but you know what? They're doing some crazy things at the state level. So if the computer system could handle it and you guys can make the case,
Right.
I'm sure a farmer would be willing to buy your water in the middle of July when they're running short. So,
And I don't know how much you guys know about the Rubicon Gates. They're actually an Australian company. So Australia's been in a drought for a very, very long time. And these guys came to the United States because they've already conquered everything they can in Australia. The government there controls the water. So that was their government solution, is they paid a bunch of engineers and people to figure out how to save water. And nobody in the US builds these gates. That's why we went with them, because it's tried and true, and we don't want to be a guinea pig on. I feel like a canal company trying to evolve. I've been in this business for 15 years, and I feel like a canal company is always the forefront of guinea pigs, because nobody moves that kind of water in open channels. We all pressurize water eventually, but nobody opens that or moves that quantity of water in an open ditch. So this was the best solution that we as a management team felt was the right way to move on the canal. So
You have 2 in right now?
2 gates. We have
Rubicon gates?
13, and we were going for 22 more this year, but we've been slowed down with a few things, but we'll get half that many in again.
And your main gate, you've got it in 2 areas, did you say, or? am I not
So the
understanding?
Central Canal
Uh-huh.
and the Hammond East are the only 2 canals right now that have these kind of gates at their heads, but there's gates throughout the system.
If we'd have been able to get everything installed, we ran into some cultural clearance problems because we're old, and so they think that we gotta go hunt for arrowheads and take pictures of the historic, I don't know, enough to make me want to spit, but anyway, a lot of that has to be redone. So our hope was to actually get all the division gates.
Well, thank you. We appreciate you coming and sharing some time, Sean.
Yeah, if I could just ask a question or maybe speak for a moment and get some clarity on the issue. So the mayor and I went and spoke with Trevor and Randy yesterday. It was a really helpful conversation. And this is all new territory for the city and for the canal company. And one of the things that they mentioned is, when you violate your instantaneous peak, as administrative penalty, they lock you out for a week. And, that's something we want to avoid. And I'm not saying that's what they're going to do, but it's a common practice with other users
yeah.
who violate their bylaws. And so that that got my attention and the mayor's attention. And of course, as Lyle mentioned, we want to be good neighbors regardless. And so, we do have the equalization basin on the Central Canal engineered, and it's at a point where we can put it out to bid. And Paul is, talked about trying to secure the gates. And so I think we're to the point where we do need to move forward with it in order to be in compliance and avoid service interruptions with our users.
Now, these gates that Paul's trying to acquire, will they be compatible with their system?
They'll be integrated.
Rubicon Gate is what.
Okay. Yeah, let's make sure they're compatible.
So, and Curtis will take some time to talk a little bit about the water fund and the resources, the financial resources that are available, but I do think we have the available resources to move forward. And so what we're proposing and working towards is trying to get it under construction this season and have it operational sort of depending upon maybe partway through the season. Paul talked about trying to install the gates initially so that when the canal's not in, and so then we can do the rest of the work while the canal's in and have it in operation.
On the Central Canal.
This is the Central Canal. Mhm.
Just south here.
Okay.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yep. Okay, everybody, let's take a little break and then we'll try to fire up at 7 o'clock.
Okay, so, Lyle. So we're planning to move 11-3 and 11 and
Yeah, let's move, all we want
let's
to
move
do is move.
11A3 and 11B1.
Just 11B1,
Oh, just the 11B1. Okay. Up,
up after, before the public comments.
public comment.
You gonna make that motion?
Are you going to do the traffic light too?
Pardon me?
Are you going to do the traffic
Well,
light?
that's what I just said to him. Do you, because that's what I understood you to
I think
say.
it'd be helpful. I think there's a public interest to know about.
Okay, so that's what I said, 11A3,
Okay.
11A3. Can you write that down?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, so,
It's right after the, we can do years of service before.
11A3 and 11B1 right after the service awards. Let's just say it that way. Then you won't have to say the other. Right?
I'm gonna go in the corner.
Well, this is awesome. This is my favorite.
Lobby too.
We want to take all those chairs along in there.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing right here.
Those 4 chairs right there, do you think?
No, those are available.
Weird. I don't know what's going on there. But we can switch it to. Switch it to.
Guess we could move these tables back, put one more row in the front.
Sure.
Here, Cynthia.
Lyle, do we need to pull them tables back and put one
Bring a few
row
more
up
chairs
here?
in, maybe so. Get some chairs.
Are they?
Yeah.
Got any cord on these? That'll still give you room for tables.
Maybe one more row.
Zach, bring them up here.
Check out those wires down there.
Roll in. Get them out there, okay? He said we moved the table.
Yeah. Once a month. Oh. Oh, we're on. We're on.
Okay.
All right. Looks like we're ready to go here. We'd like to welcome everybody out this evening for our city council meeting. Grateful that you're here. We're grateful for all the young people who are here to get awards and to recognize them for their achievements and citizenship. We appreciate that very much, and that's our future right there. I've asked myself if I'd give the prayer, so let's do that. And then our previous mayor, Roger Friedel, I asked if he'd lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Our Father in heaven, as we come before thee at this time, we're thankful for the blessings which we have. We're grateful for the opportunity to be together as a group of citizens with concern for Tremonton, for the well-being of Tremonton. We pray for thy spirit and blessing to be with us. Bless us as we go through this meeting, that we might be able to do so in a manner that we might be able to understand each other and listen to each other, that we might be able to express our concerns in a pleasing manner unto thee. We pray for thy spirit and blessing to be upon our police department and upon our fire department and EMS departments, for those who are out and working day and night to try to make sure that our city runs smoothly, for those that are cleaning our roads and taking care of things on a day-to-day basis. We're grateful for them. We pray for thy spirit and blessing to be with us, and this we say in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Would all stand and offer the proper hand salute and repeat after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thanks, Roger. We have our guests with us here this evening, all of you people, but we also have some special people we want to recognize. Our city managers, Sean Warnke. Over here to my left, we have our council member, Wes Eastep, Connie Archibald, Lyle Vance. Over to my right, Brett Rohde and Rick Siemens. And Cynthia Nelson doing our recording for the night. We got Mark Christensen back here somewhere. Over there, there you are, Mark, sorry. Chris Gothard with the fire department. Dustin Cordova with our police department. Shari Euler back there in the back. Sarah Mormon, who is our Main Street manager. We appreciate very much you being here with us this evening, and we appreciate your helping us through this, everything we need to do here. Council, is there any declarations of conflict of interest tonight? No. Approval of the agenda. Council?
Mayor, I would like to make a motion that we approve the agenda with one move, moving our reports 11A3 and 11B1 to right after the service awards tonight.
Been moved by Connie with the changes. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Rick. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Let's see, approval of the minutes of January 24th, 2023.
I'll make a motion, we approve the minutes for January 2023.
Been moved by Wes,
I'll second it.
seconded by Brett. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, now for the fun stuff. We started this a few months ago where we recognized students from North Park and McKinley and Alice C. Harris. What we're doing is we're recognizing these students for their desire to be good citizens and to be, just be examples for all of us. I'd like to recognize Wes and Connie for this idea, and they've done just a great job of working with the schools. And by the way, I didn't fail to mention that we have our principal, Mark Taylor, with us,
And also Wendy Dunham's here.
and Wendy
Dunham.
Dunham with
North Park and McKinley's.
North Park and McKinley. Very good. Thank you for showing up, and thank you for taking time to show interest in this. We appreciate. I think you principals are the ones that kind of keep your eyes open and watch for these students that are being good examples, and we appreciate that very much. Okay. So what we're going to do is I'm going to call you up, and then what I'd like you to do is stay up here with me, and then we're going to take some pictures at the end, okay? All right, now these couple right here are from last time. So this is, they just weren't here the last time we did it. So you got Kristen Seacrest. You here with us this evening? Hello, Kristen. And then we have a gift certificate to Twisted Sugar. So that's going to make everybody feel better. All right, very good.
Have her come.
And Raisin Page? Raisin?
No.
All right, now for this time,
Have her
for
come
this
and
month.
stand there.
Lyle, will you get her to come back here and then they
Oh,
can,
yeah, well, then we're going to have room.
we'll have a big picture.
There you go. Dally Bracken. Dally's from McKinley School. Neva Anderson.
Is she here?
Can you hear me up there in the back? Okay. Crimson Reese. We'll make sure they get these. We want to make sure they get these. Bobby S. Lavelle.
Is Bobby here?
Bobby right there. All right. Come on up here, Bobby. We're so proud of you. There you go. And can you go right over there and stand by that young lady right over there? Trayson Anaya. Canyon Alsop. There you go. Thank you. Jace Larson. Here you go, Jace. Thank you. Right, Sandoval Martin. There you go, Riot. Thank you. Oh, don't forget your, there you go. Hitley Tracy. Very good. There you go. Quincy McKnight. You're welcome. Setsuna Gross. Did I pronounce that right?
There's more there.
There we go. Let's see. Oh,
She's grabbing you some more.
good. We got it. You got him? Okay, very good. Ellie Newman? And Tayson Spees. Here you go. We want to thank these young men and you young boys and girls for their efforts. We do appreciate it very, very much. We'll have you all kind of crowd together and we'll get some pictures and see how that goes. Let's see, how can we do this? Let's have some of you younger ones come out in front here. Whoop, whoop, whoop. Right here. How about you right here? Come on. You can do it. Here we go.
Squeeze in together.
Come over here just a little bit. There we go.
More?
You want to crowd together just a little bit, everybody? Maybe we can have, why don't we have you come over here? So why don't you?
Oh, bless you. All right. 1, 2, 3.
And Sarah, do we put them on our webpage?
It's on social media tomorrow.
Okay.
There's one more. Get another picture. I guess you couldn't hear it.
Oh.
Oh,
Could we have the two principals come up too and be a part of the picture? Could you come up and do that? And parents? Thank you for teaching your children to be respectful, responsible, and safe. That's what this is all about. So thank you.
All right. 1, 2, 3. Good.
That's awesome.
Okay. Do you want to duck down for just a second? I'll take one and I'll move.
come up and take pictures. We're good. We got nothing to do tonight.
We appreciate the relationship we have with our schools. So thank you to all of our parents and teachers.
One more.
There's one more.
Two more. There were two
Who
kids.
did we miss? What's your names? Kenzie?
This one up here.
Oh, we need another picture.
What's your name? Kinsley? Already. Okay, we'll make sure. Let's see. We'll,
Give them hugs.
can you get their names and just write, somebody write these names down? Make sure we get them.
And then they'll be quiet when we get home.
And here it is. We'll make sure you get your certificates, okay?
It is just oh, okay, okay. So this is correct. Yeah. Okay.
Did she get a card?
She did.
Did she get one too?
Oh, it's just the one.
Oh.
Just the one.
Okay. All right. Next, we'd like to recognize some of our employees, Larry Westergaard, Mary Ann Anderson, and Zach Lefevre. So for their years of service, Larry Westergaard with the fire department for 40 years, and Chris, are you around somewhere?
I gotta let them clear out for a minute. don't you?
Okay. Because I'm in too much of a hurry? Is that what you're saying?
Pretty loud still.
Okay.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Just to make everybody feel better, the last time we had one of these, when everybody left, there was one person sitting out there. So we feel pretty fortunate tonight that there's a few in the crowd.
All right, we're leaving. Thank you so much.
There you go.
Ready?
I think so. We're good.
Okay. Well, Mayor, City Council, I appreciate the opportunity I have tonight to be able to present Blair with this award. I mean, 40 years, that's quite the feat in the fire department world. So just to give that a little bit of perspective, I was one when Blair started in the fire service. So, but we won't talk about his age. It's pretty neat to see. He's got a pretty good cheering crowd here too. So that's pretty awesome. So I'll just read this and then I'll have him come up and present him with the award. So tonight we'd like to recognize the dedication, commitment, and true passion of one of Tremonton Fire Department's most astute members, Blair Westergaard. Blair has distinguished himself in the performance of outstanding service to the Tremonton Fire Department as well as the citizens of Tremonton since he joined the department back in 1983. During these 40 years of service, Blair has exemplified his call to duty as firefighter. His dedication and leadership over the years have carried the department and made it what it is today. Blair was born to Jane Wayne Westergaard on June 18th, 1962. And if any of these are off a little bit, it's because your wife helped me. So, okay. Yeah. He has one brother and two sisters. He married his wife Kelly in September of 1982, and together they have 2 children and 6 grandchildren. Growing up, Blair was no stranger to the fire service. In fact, it runs through his veins. He comes from a lineage of firefighters that has spanned 4 generations, which includes his grandpa's Nephi Westergaard and Lynn Thomas, his father Jay, his brother Cole, as well as several nephews that are active members in the fire service today. And that's, two of them are here, so that's all of them, right? I don't think there's any more besides you two. Not yet. So Blair hired on with Tremonton Fire Department in 1983 and has served in every capacity possible all the way up to fire chief prior to the late Steve Battis. He has been instrumental in acquiring the apparatus and equipment that Tremonton currently has today. He currently serves on the department as battalion chief, and as such, he provides guidance and oversight of day-to-day operations as well as facilitate the overall strategic direction of the department. Outside of Tremonton Fire Department, he serves as the fire chief of Northrop Grumman at the Promontory and Bacchus facilities in Utah. He hired on there in the late 1990s and worked his way up to chief back in 2013. During his tenure with both departments, he has also served in various other critical roles, which have included county fire warden for Box Elder County and commander of the Snowmobile Rescue Team, Wasatch West. Some of Blair's biggest achievements throughout his career have been his role in various mass casualty incidents and several search and rescue incidents. In September of 2005, Blair played an instrumental role in the rescue efforts of the USU van rollover that occurred on I-84 just outside of Tremonton, which ultimately took the lives of 9 individuals. In that same year, he assisted in search and rescue efforts to locate a Boy Scout who disappeared from a scout camp in the High Uintas. That search effort spanned approximately 4 days and had a successful outcome. In 2022, he was a major player in a large Greyhound rollover incident near Tremonton that required the transportation of multiple critically injured patients. Everybody's familiar with that one. That one recently just happened this last December. And he's also seen his fair share of major fires within the bounds of Tremonton City, from the Midland Hotel fire in '95 to the Darrell Building fire in 2021 and many others in between. In 2017, Blair was named Tremonton's Firefighter of the Year for his hard work and his dedication to the department. For a firefighter to reach a milestone such as 40 years requires an immense amount of sacrifice, both from the firefighter as well as the firefighter's family. Blair can testify to the many missed holidays, birthdays, anniversaries, and sporting events in an effort to save lives and property of those within the community. Not only was this a sacrifice from him, but most importantly for his family. His family has always stood behind him through those missed events and gave up a part of their life in order for Blair to make the community a better and safer place. While we recognize Blair tonight for the 40 years of outstanding service, we must also recognize the sacrifice that his entire family has made to get him where he is today, as we know that it would be nearly impossible to reach this type of milestone without their love and support. So congratulations, Blair and family, on this remarkable achievement.
You gotta be old too.
He almost missed the birth of one of his kids because he was on a fire. Which one was it, Morgan?
He was in trouble.
And he was in trouble, but he still about missed it.
He had to go fight a fire before she was delivered.
Mary Ann, are you here?
Yep.
It's my honor to be able to award this 10 Years of Service Award to Mary Ann Anderson. And Mary Ann works with the Senior Center. You're a driver.
Driver, and I do assessments for our Meals on Wheels people.
And we couldn't do it without you, huh?
Thank you.
Yeah, that's great. More importantly, though, she's a neighborhood, everybody in her neighborhood calls her grandma.
Well,
The-
the
most of-
children call me Grandma Okie.
Okay, she's a retired nurse who loves to listen to folk music, loves to quilt,
And tat.
And tat. Maybe you'll have to explain to me what tat is.
Lace making.
Okay. She was raised in Oklahoma in a small town very much like Tremonton. We were given several questions that she could kind of pick the one she wanted to answer. So the first question we asked her was, what has been your favorite work project while at Tremonton City? And her answer is donating my quilting time and working at the senior center. So you're using your skills and helping other people. The second question is, what have you gained from working for Tremonton City? And Marianne says she's made wonderful friends that make me feel a great part of this wonderful community. And we also asked her, if you could witness a historical event, what would it be and why? She would like to live a week in colonial Williamsburg and experience life then. She loves history. So we want to present you with this. Present this as just a small token of our appreciation for your tens of years of service.
Thank you so much.
You bet. Yeah, I do. Yeah. So I know how to milk a cow. And so Marianne gave me this thing of whipped cream that I needed to do for Christmas, for the Thanksgiving. I did the little cakes kind of a thing, and she thought I could milk it. I did a real good job, so I stayed on that job the whole time because I could milk a cow. Okay.
So the next award is for Zach Lefevre, and it's been 10 years of service for Tremonton. Just tell you a little bit about Zach first of all. Him and his wife Kim have been married for 12 years. They have a young family, 3 girls, 1 boy. Bree's 9, Emery's 5, Kinsley, Emery turns 5 today, so missing his daughter's birthday for this. Not the actual birthday, but just a birthday. Kinsley just turned 2, and Weston, their little boy, is 2 months old. They enjoy spending time with family and friends, playing games, wrestling, and roughhousing, except for Kim, she doesn't like that. They like being outdoors, side-by-side rides, and watching the kids play sports. Zach loves learning new things, teaching, working with his hands, and helping people in need. Professionally, he's a certified youth sports administrator, a certified change leader, and is a graduate of the URPA Leadership Academy. He was the Box Elder Chamber Board Member of the Year in 2019, and he's also gotten a hole-in-one at the Teton Lakes Golf Course in Rexburg, Idaho, when he was in college. So three questions that we had Zach answer. The first one was, what is his favorite part about working for Tremonton City? And he said Tremonton City has given him the opportunity to be himself, a chance to learn and to grow, to gain experience in many different aspects of his career. He says, it's taken care of me to be able to buy my home, raise my family. It has trusted in me to make mistakes and improve myself and those around me. It has given me friends and opportunities to better the community the best I know how. The next question he answered was, what is your motto or personal mantra? And his is, see a need, fill a need, find a way to help someone in need. And the last question, if you could guess what kind of genre Zach likes to listen to, what would be your first guess? Think about it for a second. Answer, rap and hip hop. But heavy metal, bluegrass, and even some country. Anything except for the most famous artist in the world right now, Taylor Swift. So about 10 years and 1 month ago, I was in this room and we were interviewing Zach. He was in Wisconsin, visiting family. He was on the screen. We had TVs up on the back wall. And he had a nice shirt on. It was Zoom before anybody really knew what Zoom was. I think actually it was Skype, back when Skype was the thing. And I knew he would be a good fit for the department, but I just wanted to know if he was really wearing slacks, on a Zoom interview, because I had never done one of those before. And I don't know the answer still to this day, but I believe it was just gym shorts that he was wearing. I've enjoyed working with Zach. We were kind of partners in crime for the last 10 years, and I'm grateful to give him this award for 10 years of service.
Zach, your check would have been a little bigger, but we give you a nice building instead.
We'd like to thank everybody, Blair and Marianne and Zach. We appreciate your service to our community, and we appreciate all of our employees for their service to our community as well. I overlooked one item, kind of a really, really important one. We need to do the fiscal year 2022 audited financial statements by our financial director, Curtis Roberts.
We should write that down. We should write that down.
I just kind of figured that you wanted to get everybody out of the room so they weren't bored to death. So you're welcome, everyone. So we're going to start off the presentation. We've got our auditors here. You guys want to come up? We have Mike Kidman. He's been the audit partner on the engagement for a long time. And Andy Hernandez, who's kind of taking over. So you guys want to come up, and we'll let them talk about what they did, and then I'll talk a little bit about the numbers.
So, thank you for letting us come. I'll try and be fairly quick. We'll just touch on the opinions. I do want to say we appreciate doing the work, and the audit went very well this year. We were through it in early January, and it went very smoothly this year. And we appreciate Curtis and Sean and the other people that help us work through the documents and the things that we need to do. For the reports that are in the financial statements, the first one is right up front on page 1, 2, and 3. It now takes us 3 pages to tell you what an audit report is. It keeps getting longer. But what we're saying here is that we followed generally accepted auditing standards in performing the audit, and that the financial statements are presented fairly, correctly, in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. And we have no information where we're telling you something that's not quite right. It's all good the way it should be. So at the end of, on page 3, at the end of that, it tells you there's also a report that we do, which is back here in the back now, where we, on page 87, and that's the report where we say we've looked at controls and compliance at the financial statement level. And so we don't audit your controls per se, but we take a look at them to make sure that we get the correct financial reporting process working, and understand how your numbers come together and what people's roles and responsibilities are and those kind of things. And this report tells you that we did not find any material weaknesses in the control structure as we looked through it and understood how your transactions and reports come together, nor did we find any major compliance issues. And so that's the report that you want to have there. The next one is the one that we have to do for the state. The state auditor puts out a compliance manual, and they emphasize certain state laws and regulations, and their book changes from time to time on things that they think are important and whatnot. And so we list right on there on page 89 the detailed areas that apply to the city that we've done specific tests on. And the state auditor writes what those tests are, and they're very much pass-fail kinds of things. You know, like you've either complied with your budgetary process or you haven't. You've done what you're supposed to do in carrying the right amount of fund balance, or you haven't. So we do all of those tests and issue this report. And again, it tells you that we did not find any weaknesses in looking at your compliance efforts with regard to these state issues. And we did not find any errors in that process either. And then the last one is on page 92, and we haven't had this report very often, fact, this one is kind of unique. Because you had so much federal money, there was a requirement to, with the COVID relief funds, to look at that. It put your threshold up that we had to do some additional procedures on those federal funds. And so this particular report is an option that's available to you. We did not do what's called a single audit, which is a little bit more comprehensive in some ways, but the standards allowed us, and Curtis did a good job directing us into this option where we could be very focused and very efficient in just testing the COVID dollars. And so this report is short and just straight to the point that we looked at the compliance that was directly associated with those funds. And the city did a good job in documenting, what was necessary for us to see that those compliance requirements were met for that particular fund. I don't think we'll see this report again unless we have another pandemic. So, but it was good. The other document that we have issued that's not bound in here is just our standard management letter where we make required communications to the council, where we talk about we did look at your accounting policies, we looked at your accounting practices. You did have one significant change in that area. In the past, there's been some pages in your audit report that talk about the status of your infrastructure in terms of how well it's being maintained. And through Curtis changed how you were reporting that based on a comment that he received from the state auditors. I didn't really love that comment. I thought what you were doing was just fine, but I agreed. I could see where Curtis was coming from, that it's not worth fighting with them over certain presentation issues. And so he booked some things in the infrastructure area that you haven't had recorded before. And you've had the information, but it's not been part of your financial statements. So that was a change. And the other thing that we didn't do, the only government that we didn't go through, is you didn't have any leases. So you missed all the fun of implementing the new lease standards. So most governments have quite a few leases. You're fortunate that you're fairly debt light with regards to those leases, which is a good thing. But that required in other governments a lot of effort and a lot of additional work and disclosure, and you missed all of that fun. So I know Curtis felt bad about it, but if you don't have any leases, you don't have any leases. So other than those required communications, and we don't even have any other matters in here where sometimes we'll put things in that are just a best practice recommendation. Tremonton, for a small city, is very well run. Your financial matters are handled well, your people do a good job, and this is a very clean report that you should be happy with. So I'll let Curtis go into the numbers details unless there's questions. All right, thank you.
Any questions for
Let
Mike?
me just say again, Andy is a new partner in our firm. I have told the firm that after April 30th, they're going to have to work hard to get me to come in the office. So Andy's taken over this account. He's a new partner. He's very good. He has lots of years of experience. He went to Bear River High School. He wanted to do this job, so we're transitioning this job to him. So he'll take good care of you and work with Curtis a lot. And I did have him involved. Seeing how Curtis does things, he did a lot of the detailed review on the detailed work papers. And so I wanted him to come and just kind of see what Curtis does here as he presents every year and just be part of that, so.
You want to say anything to him?
Sure, yeah. So, Andy Hernandez, I've been a partner. This is my second year as a partner. I went to Utah State. I grew up in Beaver Dam, so lived there since I was 3. Went to Bear River High School, Fielding Elementary School. So, yeah. So I know Tremonton very well. So I mean, don't get over as much. I live in Mendon now with my family. So once I got out of Utah State, moved there with my family. So, but yeah, been at the firm for 14 years. So, yeah, awesome. Look forward to working with you guys.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Got a quick question, Curtis. So do we get a discount where we're Tremont City, Wyoming on page number 1?
It's on a couple of pages.
We'll fix
You might want to look at that. But the real question I've got is, can you just dig in a little bit further about the infrastructure? What's going on with that?
Yeah. So there's if you look at, let me find my pages. We're going to look first on page 13 and then put your finger in page 52. So government financial statements have a few different ways that we look at things. I don't usually spend a lot of time on page 13. This is what we call an entity-wide level. It's designed to mimic somewhat like what a business would. So you see our governmental activities, we see our business type activities. Business activities follow mostly business type accounting. Government activities don't. Government activities focus on current resources. But at the top level, they require us to bring in more of a picture of what a business would. So we start bringing in long-term debt. We start bringing in long-term assets. So we have to bring in what's called infrastructure. So about a third of the way down on in the assets section, you're going to see a line that says infrastructure is $15 million. We've always reported that number. But when the standard first came about, of having to report this way, we were given two options. One is just record standard depreciation and depreciate things out like the business. The other one was to do what was an alternative method, which you didn't depreciate your infrastructure assets. Because the theory was those assets have a super long life, and really at the time, we made the decision that it was better to report the condition of those assets. We felt it was more instructional to our staff and inside this report. And so if you go to last year's report, there's a whole bunch of pages about here's our condition assessment on the roads. And every 3 years, we'd bring a firm in, we'd assess the condition of the roads, and we'd report that. We'd assess curb and gutter conditions and sidewalk conditions and report those so that we kind of knew how are we doing, what are some areas that we need to invest funds, and it was a really strategic approach. Well, the state auditor's office came through this last year and said, we don't like the modified approach. We don't like that alternative approach. And if you can't make those assessments with your staff on a yearly basis, you can't use the modified approach anymore. And it's a really aggressive interpretation of that standard. As Mike said.
I agree with that. It is a very aggressive interpretation.
But the problem is we're one of very, very few entities that do the modified approach. So it'd be us against the world. Wasn't worth fighting. We're still going to do assessments. We're still going to make those types of determinations. It's just not going to be reported in the financials. So if you look on page 52, we went through and calculated up what the approximate accumulated depreciation would be, and it came out just shy of $6 million on that $15 million worth of assets. So from here going forward, we'll have basically depreciation that's recorded into our expenses at this level. Doesn't affect any of our fund accounting. All the stuff that we're doing on a routine, day-to-day basis, nothing is changing there. This is just... Sometimes you just don't kick against the pricks. And that was said specifically, sorry. It's just not worth it. So that's what that is. It's a great question. It's just not one worth fighting. There are things I'll go to battle for all day. This was just not one of them. It's not going to change how we treat things. It's not going to change how the road department functions, our public works. Doesn't change any of that. It's just an accounting thing. But, so speaking of accounting, I always try to make something a little bit new, a little bit fresh. And I was drawn back to a time when I was going to school in accounting, and I had a rather unique professor who said, I want you to think about painting a picture of an entity, of a business. And we're like, what in the world is he talking about? We're here to study accounting. He goes, I want you to paint a picture of what a business is looking like and how they're functioning, what's making them work. And we're like going, okay, well, you could draw some buildings and stuff. He said, well, no. The only thing you can do is use numbers and words. And I was really enthralled with this. Because he goes, that's what your financial statements are really trying to do. They're trying to paint a picture of what does this government look like, and what direction is it going, where's it been? And I was caught upon these words, and so I was sitting here going, how do I paint a picture? And I thinking, I'm going to go back, clear back when I first started, and I was going to try and find the financial statements. Mike, I think we took them on in 96 or 97. I think
1800?
Not 1800s, but thanks for asking. I appreciate that. I couldn't find that, so I did the next best thing. I found one that I could look at. I did a little bit of research. In the year 2000, the population of Tremont City was approximately 5,700 people. Interesting fact. In 2010, and I gave a couple handouts. I want you to think about this. Population was 7,700. Population for 2020 was 9,900. It's interesting, it's going up by about 2,000 people, but we're already up a little bit over 500 people in 1 year. That was the 2021. So it's a little bit accelerated. Not to give you any concern, but our population's almost doubled since 2020. If you look at this financial statement that I just gave you a handout. It says balance sheet 2010. It really is 2010. This is not Wyoming. This actually is Tremont. I want to kind of give you a view. So if you compare that to page 15, so just kind of set those side by side for a second. One, we didn't even have a fire EMS fund. It was complete. It was captured in what's called non-major funds. So, and now the RD3 isn't as big, and it's kind of its own. And by the way, now we have a capital projects that stands alone. So if you look at fund balance, this is a real kind of fun indicator. Fund balance is kind of like, what's my equity position? What do we really have? What does the city have as resources? Our general fund in 2010 had $1.75 million. We now have 2.1. Everybody, well, that's pretty static. Yeah, you're right, because the general fund has caps on it and how much we can maintain. So remember, we use capital project funds to stash cash so that we can do projects, right? So the special revenue fund at that time actually had a negative fund balance, almost $200,000. It owed money to the general fund for all the improvements that we'd put in. And now it's got a positive balance of roughly $2 million. Your non-major funds had 316. Now this included all of the capital project funds, all the ambulance fund, parks, everything. And now our non-major fund and our capital project funds have almost $11 million in them. And what's the difference? I did the water fund. I'm not going to cover the water and treatment, sewer and stuff like that. But if you look at this page right here, it's kind of a funky sheet, set landscape. We used to do this schedule for the council because this is just the governmental debt. By the way, there was a separate page for the enterprise funds. They had more debt. You can just look at all those leases that we had. I mean, we were leasing all sorts of police vehicles, trucks, whatever. We even had a road lease. Okay, so we didn't have enough money to improve the roads, so we went out and borrowed money to make a lot of the improvements over there around 10th West and stuff. And we did that over like a 20-year period. Now, everybody said, what was happening? Well, this city council and the administration sat down and said, we're not sure we like the picture that we're painting right here. We think we can do a little bit better and be better stewards with our city funds. So there was a conscious effort to stop leasing, to start paying for things as we go, to save up money and build up from cash. So when you can look at what the city is now, thanks to the inspired leadership of the council, the hard work of a ton of hours by city staff. We can gladly report to you today, general fund is very solvent. It's solid, it's right where it needs to be. But in addition, the special revenue fund, the fire EMS fund, it's strong. It's not perfect. There's still improvements that we can envision out there that could make it stronger. Capital projects, we have some money set aside. We've done a number of really good projects. We've made some great road improvements. We have done numerous things with our capital projects. Our vehicles are getting replaced. A lot of the roads are really well maintained. Is it perfect? No. But we're not going to the citizens going, we're broke. We're not worried if one of the pieces of equipment breaks down, we're not scrambling going, who's going to loan us some money? We have been faithful stewards of this funds and set them aside so we're ready to handle those types of emergencies and give the council ability to really direct projects that you want to do, not just handling things on an emergency basis. So our non-major funds also are in a solid position where money's been set aside. We can go through the same thing with the water fund. We're going to a little bit later. But the biggest thing I want to present with this was vision that was caught 10, 15 years ago. It was a direction. So we're kind of coming into budget season. I'm not going to focus a lot on the past. The past is where we've been. But what we need the council to do now is really say, okay, this was 10 years ago. What do you want to see in 10 years from now? What's the picture you would like to paint, and what numbers can we start envisioning and putting together to determine what this city's going to look like 10 years from now, 15 years from now? That's a legacy. I'm super excited with this financial report and the legacy that it's presented in the last 10, 15 years. I think this council, I think the city staff with their conscientious way of monitoring their spending and just being stalwart stewards of the city's funds has created a fantastic place where we're at. As we go into budget season, where do we want to go? What picture do you want to paint? How do we make this city take the next step? With that, I'll answer any questions. I'll gladly go into more detail.
Council, do you have any questions? You know, we appreciate this report and appreciate your way of telling us about it. So it kind of makes me feel good about where the direction that we're going and that kind of thing. And so, council, any
A
questions?
lot of pressure. 10 years from now, when some of these, well, there's not many younger ones left here, but what are they gonna think? What did we do to set them up as well as what we've been set up coming in?
Okay.
They took some heat, they took some pressure. There was some heated city council meetings, I know. And
We're in a transition, you know, at this point, and so this is a good time to start to think about what we want things to look like, because there's a lot of things we need to do in terms of personnel and everything else. So it doesn't matter what it is, you can just check that box.
we're going to make sure it's properly presented. We're going to make sure we're complying with all the laws. You've heard that we do a really good job right now, and we're going to do everything we can from the administration side to set things up to make that happen in the future. We will be coming with recommendations of investments and things that we should be considering. And I just have this vision of what Tremont can become, and it's fantastic. We started this vision back in 96, 97 when I first started out here, and it's fun. It's a fantastic process, and Tremont is a wonderful city.
Thank you.
Thanks, Curtis.
Thanks, Curtis. We appreciate the report. Thanks, you guys. Appreciate the report. And, all right. Okay, we're gonna change things around just a little bit here. We've got our presentations out of the way, years of service out of the way. We were going to go to public comments, but I think what we're going to do is we're going to move, Connie recommended that we move item 11B1 and 11A3 to the next here. What we wanted to do is we wanted to discuss this area right here, and then we'll move into our public comments period after that. Okay, Sean, you want to give us a DRC report and
Sure.
where we're at on things?
So Cynthia's going to pull up a map. And as you know, back in December of 2021, the city council approved a zoning ordinance. It was the Rivers, well, it was an annexation and a zoning ordinance, and it was the Rivers Edge annexation and overlay. And that was a legislative decision. And there's two broad categories of land use decisions, legislative, which is done through ordinances, and administrative. And so since you legislatively approved the annexation and the overlay ordinance, at this point in the process, we're in an administrative decision where city staff is reviewing land use applications to make sure that it complies with the land use code or with the law that you created. And the approval of a subdivision is an administrative decision, and it's done by the DRC. And the Rivers Edge Group has been working towards getting their first phase of their development approved through the DRC. And that's the area that you see to the left in what's sort of a pinkish color. So you can see potentially the park as a defining boundary. So it's going to be everything on the west side of what is 950 East extended. So it'd be on the other side of Jesse Quarters property going north. And so where they're at in the process is they have submitted construction plans, so we're in the final stages of reviewing those construction plans for compliance with the city ordinance. We are also working on a development agreement. A development agreement essentially formalizes all the requirements and conditions, and it is recorded, so we'll run with the property. And there will also be an engineer's estimate that accompanies that development agreement, which is used to secure the public improvements associated with the approval. This one's there's one unique element that's also going to be a part of this development approval, and it's a phased development agreement between Tremont City, the developer, and the Utah Department of Transportation. The traffic study that was required and reviewed by UDOT and by the city requires that after essentially the first phase is complete, so before or in conjunction with the second phase, they'll need to install a traffic light. And so the phase development agreement with UDOT and the developer in the city formalizes that. And that's roughly speaking with the second phase. It might be a portion of the second phase. That agreement is forthcoming. I've seen drafts of it, but we have not finalized the agreement. Something else in one of the future phases, as you go further east, that yellow section, there is an outlet to, I think it's SR 13, if I have the state road correctly. And it'll be through property that currently is owned by the canal company, but the developer is in the final stages of securing the expansion of their property to accommodate all the turning movements at that intersection. So the other thing I was going to mention to you is part of the development pre-annexation agreement requires that they dedicate to the city a pump station site along with easements. And those were in the process of getting those dedicated to the city along with the park, along with water shares. And so those are all forthcoming. In the packet, I included a copy of the pump station site and also the easements. Those easements will tie into phase one. And with the recordation of phase one and with the recordation of those easements, we'll have a complete access from the East Canal over to to Holmgren East and through River's Edge. So the other thing I was going to mention to you, one of the public comments that came out through the legislative process and decision making was the need to have a traffic light at the crossroads. And based upon that comment, the city did reach out to UDOT. And if you could scroll down one more, actually, right there. That's the plat itself for River's Edge Phase 1. I don't know if that helps. It's turned on its side there. But if you would go to the actual traffic light. So since that time, the city staff has been working with the Utah Department of Transportation. They did do a traffic study, and it met several warrants to require a traffic light. This is a UDOT facility. It's the intersection of two state roads. And as part of the process, once they realized that it met the warrants, they looked at two different options. One was a roundabout, and one is a traditional intersection. Just in the interest of time, I would just summarize that typically the roundabout, or I should say, the roundabout did perform better in a lot of matrix, but it's so expensive in the beginning that they're rarely used. And so even the second option of a traditional intersection was beyond what UDOT had in the short term to put a light in. And so city staff continued to work with UDOT, and UDOT was great to continue to evaluate and see if they could find a solution that might lead to the implementation of the traffic control device sooner. And they are proposing essentially doing a traditional intersection, but there will not be turning movements or dedicated turning or dedicated lanes for each traffic movement. And so what they looked at was the traffic study itself. They looked at the different volumes associated with each traffic movement, and in some cases it made sense to have consolidated traffic lanes. So I don't know if you can you zoom in a little closer to see the delineated striping? But as you might, a little bit more if you would, as you might expect, if you're traveling into Treatmont, so you're headed north on SR 13, you have all the traffic movements there. You have a left lane, a through, and a right turn lane. But if you look, for example, if you were coming from Deweyville into Treatmont, you will have a shared lane. And so based upon this re-envisioned improvement, they are anticipating to work towards constructing it in 2024. So the process now going forward is they've got to work with the Transportation Commission. It's got to go through their process, get on the list, get appropriation, but they felt like they found some funds to do the improvement next year. So.
Next year, right? That's good.
Yeah.
It's really good.
So.
All right, good. Any questions for Sean?
Great news.
All right. We'll move on then to our public comment period. This is an opportunity for you to address the city council regarding your concerns or ideas. We're asking that you keep your comments to 3 minutes. We will have time for discussion after your comments, so we can sort of talk things out a little bit, but the time is now yours.
Hi, Capri Austin, a resident of Tremonton. Lookout Point, 234, Spring Hollow, 41, Spring Acres, 53, Edgewood, 226, Matheson, 304, Holmgren East, 17, Tremonton Place, 28, Aspen Ridge, 150, Hanson, 418, River Valley, 32, and I didn't get numbers for Envision Estates, Bear River Meadows, Harvest Village, Archibald Estates. So we are around 3,200 units. I am disheartened to see the amount of growth and not the infrastructure to support it. As a resident here, I shop here, I try to shop here. Main Street is a mess. There's businesses that I want to support. Main Street is a mess. I don't like going to Kent's. Kent's is a mess. Realty's is a mess. People shop outside. I mean, there's been the comment of let's sell the city. And it's disheartening to think that, I think when we look at all the numbers, we are growing too fast. We are, and I've mentioned it before, a survey was done to about 350 people, which doesn't even, I mean, that's not even 1% of the residents that live here. And 83% of them think that we are growing too fast. So, I mean, that's kind of why I'm here. I do think that we're moving too fast. I can't pull out of my neighborhood. I mean, Britt Brody, I think that, you're feeling the crunch as well. I work outside of this community because in order to afford my house, I can't work here in town. So rather than keep building and pushing people here, let's provide jobs for them. Let's provide an infrastructure and bring businesses here that people want to support here. In order to, and we keep talking about affordable housing, we've got the state on us, we're going to get penalties. The state has never penalized anyone for not having affordable housing. They have a process that's broken. Yes, I think we should progress. I do, and we have to. But in order to do that, we have to have affordable housing and call it what it is. I mean, how do you guys regulate what a contractor builds or what homes are selling for? You guys cannot do that. So a contractor can come in and say, these are affordable housings. Well, $500,000 is not affordable. Our median income is $60,000 here in Tremonton. In order to afford a $500,000 home, which is what these are selling for, you would have to have an income of $113,000 with 20% down, which is $100,000. The majority of the residents can't do that here. I can't do that here. That's why I work outside the county. Anyway, one more quick thing. As far as the stoplight goes, a stoplight is a great idea. Today, on my way home from work, the traffic was a half a mile long. It went way past the storage units. And so I think a traffic light is perfect, but with a turning lane. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Christy Bocat. I read the state of the city, which I appreciate it coming out. So with some things that caught my attention, the citizens are worried about the water. After listening to the previous meeting, we should all be worried about the water. Road congestion, services. My big thing is I hate to say it, I've had a few ambulance rides, hate to say it. How stretched are our EMTs? They are such a vital part of this community. Are we stretching them too thin by adding more and more people? And then we sit and hear from the previous gentleman that our numbers have doubled since 2020. That is not in any way the values that a lot of you ran on when you ran for office. Future land use map shows what the city can handle. If we don't have the water, which we don't, why are we allowing people to continue to build? That is a big concern of mine. River's Edge is back on. I'm going to ask one question. Why apartments? Paul Fowler asked the same question, and his answer was given to him by Sean, and it says, I love to see a variety of housing in Box Elder County. Lacks that. We don't need any more apartments. We need affordable housing. I look at my kids, man, they can afford things. It's scary. I think we need to really take a step back and look at our services. We don't have enough water. Our sewer is probably the pits. Try and get a doctor's appointment. I had an emergency, and I was told at the end of January, you can see your doctor the end of February. I said, no, I can't wait. And they said, well, let's just check it. So I went in. They said, oh, we got to take care of this, but we can't take care of it for 2 weeks. Everything adds up, line upon line, precept upon precept. If the services are not there, we cannot keep pushing these housing districts in this town. Somewhere, somebody needs to pull the strings back a little bit. And there's a huge project that's been projected up on Radio Hill that's being looked at right now. Step back, look at the town. You guys ran on small town values. This is not small town anymore.
Thank you, Christie. Do you have any comments on any of those questions, council?
Did you guys have any pressing questions you wanted us to answer? Did you have a pressing question that you wanted us to answer? I mean, appreciate your comments, but I just want to make sure we didn't leave you hanging.
Well, I know that the property for River's Edge went out of River's Edge and then now it's back into River's Edge.
Oh, what, okay.
Any kind of
Can I answer that?
agenda that stated that that was
That was a mistake in, that was an error in the title company in what they were, it was just a mix-up in the title company. The bottom land got put into River's Edge. It wasn't supposed to be put in River's Edge. That got straightened out. Then there were little parcels of property up above that were not in River, that got in our name for some reason, and we got that straightened out and got that back into River's Edge, as it should have been. So that, it was a title company error that caused all this grief for everybody. It was grief.
have a contact to the title company or the.
I can get that to you. I right off the top of my head, I can't give you that, but I can get you that information. Or I can have you talk to their attorney too. We worked with their attorney to get it all straightened out as well. So one of those, I can give you both of those phone numbers and you can get that, ask whatever questions you'd like there.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
How quickly are they planning on starting this building? Like, if we can't even get a stoplight till 2024, and we're adding more homes, it's gonna be even crazier.
That's kind of, we're just going through the process with the DRC. So this is just a report that we're giving you. I think I think they think like we would have thought, that if interest rates are what they are, it's going to be, they're going to want to do this and make it a success and sell those lots. So I think interest rates are going to have a bearing on things. Personally, that's just my own opinion, but that's what I'd be watching.
Mr. Mayor, I'd tell you that in the conversations that we have, they're close to being in a position where they can record. I mentioned the steps that are remaining, approval of the construction plans, the development agreement, the phased improvement agreement with UDOT. And when they comply with those requirements, then they can record. They've talked about trying to construct this spring, whether they actually move forward with that, I guess will be their decision. But once they record, excuse me, I think they have a year to start improvements, is my recollection. So we'll see. The next step that'll give us some indication of their timeline is recordation of the plat.
Okay.
So I also have another question for Sean.
Can you come up so we can get your name and then we can hear you a little bit better?
Tasha Spies. And my question is, like you said, that UDOT's requiring around phase 2 that they need to put an intersection in. But you said it might be like already after phase 2 has started or something
Yeah.
to that effect. I'm just wondering, like, the road never has been finished to connect 775
Can you
East.
go to the actual?
So when you say they might have to put in the intersection in phase 2, is it like a for sure thing?
Yeah, let me get clear on what intersections we're talking about, so I think the intersection that you're talking about, the connection is going to be on the far left, and that will be done with phase 1. Is that
Oh, so at the end of phase 1.
During phase 1.
during phase 1?
Phase
Can you
one,
move to
okay.
the pointer to like lot?
122 and 111.
Keep going, right there.
So when they record the development, again, my recollection without looking at the code is they have 1 year to start the improvements. And so when they record everything in pink, that connection, that gap that exists now in the road network in your subdivision will be completed. What I was talking about.
I'm not really talking about
Okay.
775 East. I'm just wondering if it's gonna be like that.
So.
Are you talking about Main
Yeah, where it
Street?
connects to Main Street.
Yeah, so the Main Street light is not required during Phase 1. So I haven't seen the complete agreement, that's why I can't tell you exactly what, I think they were talking about a number of lots being built, and if it's lots, then it might be triggered
Okay.
halfway through Phase 2, but it was around about Phase 2 is what they talked about conceptually, and I'll know more when I actually see it in writing.
Yeah, the word might just was a bit scary.
Yeah, no, I understand.
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tasha. All right, public comment period is closed. New council business. Discussion and consideration of adopting resolution number 23-09, approving a consultant agreement between Hemco LLC and Tremonton City for lobbying services on state and local government relations and appropriations with the Utah legislature and state government agencies. Sean, do you want to bring us up to speed on this? And I can maybe pitch in a little bit there too.
Yeah, this would be Tremont City working with a particular group of individuals to help us secure a water grant. And we feel like we have a good chance of actually obtaining them based upon the project we're proposing and them helping us through the process. So, what's at stake is essentially a $2 million grant.
And that can apply to our secondary water, right?
That can apply to our secondary water, and that's kind of what we're sort of considering is working, maybe using this to construct Service Area 4, which would be sort of Tremont Street, or Main Street on Tremont Street South, and I think a little bit north of Main Street as well, or just south of Main Street, just south of Main Street.
Canal to the.
So this funding would be funding that would be provided through the Utah legislature. It's ARPA funding that is available to communities for water development and water projects. And so we feel like this is a good project, a good fit for us. And anyway, that's kind of what we're considering. I think I've spoken with most of you on this and tried to explain it as best as I could. But that's the resolution that's on the docket. Sean, do you have anything else to add to that?
No, I'm glad you mentioned the ARPA funds. I would just add, over the last several years, the state has been trying to make funding available for water. And the first time they made, I think, $50 million available. And it was a really competitive process. And subsequently, they've made other funding available, primarily for cities that have secondary waters without meters. And so Utah League of Cities and Towns lobbied on behalf of cities that actually already have meters for their secondary water system, and they opened up this new funding source, which is again why we feel like we're a good match for this. And Senator Sandel actually introduced us to these individuals and felt like they would be a good fit to help us secure those funds.
So this is earmarked for the future holding pond out in Elwood? Is that where we're shooting?
No, this is what we're proposing because we're looking at, it's a water conservation project. And so while that's a part of the overall system, we're looking to try to build out a phase. We feel like that's a more compelling proposal for the funding. And so as Lyle mentioned, it would be applying for construction of Phase 4. As you know, we already have a pump station already constructed for Phase 4, and we have partial infrastructure there. So we would leverage what's already in the ground by continuing the distribution lines north and trying to catch, more dwelling units. But I would say that equalization basin becomes on the central canal becomes more critical, to free up the water shares that we need to be able to put it into service.
So it's to put pump 4 in that area, that's what this.
Service area 4.
Service area 4, that's what you're earmarked it for?
Yeah.
What's the cost of these guys?
They, so in order to work with these people, they are asking us to come up with $100,000 because of state ordinances or state laws. They can't take a percent. They have to do it up front. It has to be kind of a fee up front. And so what we would do is there would be the $100,000 up front, but we can pay for that over the two budget periods. Over 10 months. So it'd cover 2 different budget periods. Is that right, Sean?
Correct.
And so, anyway, we did quite a bit of research on these people, and everything from Scott Sandal to Brigham City has used them, Eagle Mountain has used them, Utah League of Cities Towns. We talked to the league.
Grantsville City.
Grantsville used them. Who have I missed? Payson. So, and when we spoke with all of these people, they came back highly recommended. And so in fact, I think one of the big projects that they were successful on was the bridge over the railroad tracks in Brigham City on Forest Street, where they're going to go over the top. That's like a $30 million project, and these people were the ones that were able to find this money. And so we're feeling pretty good about that.
Brigham.
These people, we've got there. So they've started the process today. They opened the funding today. No, how do I say that? They opened
the portal.
The portal. They opened the portal today, and so we're off to the races unless we say no. So.
What kind of success rate have they got? Do we know that number?
Yeah, 100% is what they told us.
100%
Oh, wow.
success rate.
Okay.
But
These people, let's get going.
They're really good.
But, I would say, Mr. Mayor and Council, it is a risk, and there's always risk associated with any water development. I kind of liken it to drilling a well. There's no sure things in water. If we were drilling, we'd spend a couple $100,000 hoping to have success. So.
Well, I'll entertain a motion on this resolution, council.
I'll make the motion.
Go
Go ahead.
That we adopt resolution number 23-09, approving the consultant agreement.
I'll second it.
Been moved by Lyle Vance and seconded by Wes. Let's start over here with you, Rick.
Rick, aye.
Brett, aye.
Lyle Vance, aye.
Honey Archibald, aye.
West Eye.
Thank you, everybody. I think I think this is going to be a really good thing, and there is a little risk to it, but I feel like we've done as much homework as we can on this and feel really good about it. So, discussion and consideration of adopting resolution number 23-10, a resolution of the City Council of Tremont City, Utah, declaring its intention to reimburse itself for expenditures incurred in connection with financing all or a portion of the costs of the acquisition of property and construction of improvements, and to the issuer's water system and all related improvements with proceeds of bonds that it intends to issue and related matters. You want to unravel that one, Sean?
Sure. This came from a previous council discussion, and council member Vance wanted city staff to look into the possibility of essentially getting reimbursed from future bond proceeds for improvements that we would be making or expenses that we'd be making now. And specifically, to put it in context, as everyone knows, we were talking about trying to acquire property for an equalization basin on the East Canal. And I think ultimately and historically, the city has bonded for the build-out of our secondary water system. And so so I reached out to our bond counsel and also with Zions Bank with Alex Buxton, who is our municipal advisor. And they told us of a path forward, which is called a reimbursement resolution. There are certain rules as it relates to using those bond proceeds because they are tax exempt bonds, and they don't want people manipulating that tax advantage or the lower interest rate. And so you need to declare ahead of your expenses. There's a way you can do it after, but it's a shorter period of time. It's 60 days, meaning if we purchased something, we would have 60 days to receive the bond proceeds without doing a reimbursement resolution. But this reimbursement resolution opens the gate and the time period into the future. In fact, there is no deadline per se on when we would actually need to bond. So our bond counsel put the reimbursement resolution together. I looked at what it would take to build out service areas 4 and service area 9, and it came to about $6 million. And so it does require that you put in your reimbursement resolution what amount you think you might want to be reimbursed up to. And so I used that essentially $6 million as the parameters, much like parameter resolutions. I don't know if you remember when we went through the bonding process, but it's the same thing. It just sets the parameters by which you might be eligible to seek reimbursement.
So the overall is we're not really just covering the ARP funds, which was $1 million, but this opens it up so that we can pull all that money back in and use it in some other infrastructure.
This allows you to essentially spend up to $6 million now or any time into the future. And then if you elected to go through and bond for improvements to build it out, then reimburse yourself from those bond proceeds.
And these funds in the future still have to be used for water purposes.
Are you talking about the ARPA funds?
No, I'm talking about
Not the
what we're
bond
going to
Yeah,
get back on.
it's pretty specific. Yeah, and ARPA, this is more a bond for water improvements using, we'd be pledging our water revenues. So it is specific to water system improvements. It's pretty broadly defined to, again, allow us as much flexibility as possible. But, you know, it wouldn't apply to water, or I should say wastewater. If we wanted, you know, we could do something similar for wastewater if we had a wastewater improvement and felt like we were going to bond in the future. But this just opens and gives us more options, you know, in the future, like you were suggesting, be available. And this is the mechanism to do that.
And actually, if we get a grant, and if we find the $500,000 to pay for that equalization basin, we just don't take that much in the bond.
Yeah, this does not obligate you to bond for $6 million. It's just the parameters. You define the parameters, which you might bond up till. So this is another item that you asked for as part of those discussions, council, and that was to get cost estimates of the various improvements, and those are detailed here in these pages. The other thing that I would just, you know, with Curtis being here.
This is 9, right?
Yes, those are combined.
Itemized cost for 9.
Along with, it does have also the equalization basin. Scroll up, if you would. Okay, there's an equalization basin, about $200,000 $250,000 is what they estimate in actual site improvements. That's not including the cost of the land.
Any questions, council?
Mr.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, with Curtis here, one of the other components we were talking about is funding, and, as part of this, would you like to hear?
Are you talking about the equalization basin?
I'm just talking about maybe in general with the water fund, because there was a time several years ago where the fund did not have as much resources in.
I'd like to have Curtis. And then if you could talk a little bit about the land, if that's going to fit into that equation at all, the 4 acres.
I could talk about that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if we go back to your financials and turn to page 19, I didn't cover a lot with the enterprise funds, trying to keep it a little bit shorter.
Thank you.
Now this is as of June 30th, but we haven't really significantly impacted this. If you look at the very first line in the water fund, about $4.4 million. Down a little bit farther, there's restricted cash 1.6. We've spent all that restricted cash, that was leftover bond proceeds. We spent that doing the improvements. But the 4 million is sitting there roughly. I mean, it's come down just a titch because we're in that part of the year, but we've got 2.5 million that could easily be used, comfortably be used for water improvements, water capital. I mean, and this is part of that vision that we were talking about creating. We wanted to give the council flexibility as much as possible, and we've been able to build this up. Now, obviously, the funds that were transferred in for the ARPA, if you look at page 20, it's right there with you. Just up from the bottom, there's a transfer from the general fund, that $1,089,000 that was transferred in. So, that's part of that 2.5. I mean, you could push me up to 3, and we'd still be pretty comfortable on we could invest that into the water system.
You say 2.5?
2.5. You could stretch my arm to 3. I mean, and I'd be really comfortable.
Minus the ARPA. If you minus the ARPA, then 1.5 to 2 million.
Yeah.
In addition to the ARPA.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
And so, do you mind kind of talking about what changed the financial picture in this fund?
Yeah, actually, this if we looked at last year, this fund actually had a large amount of impact fees that was sitting there. And when the city council went through and adopted their new impact fee ordinance last year and updated your impact fee, that ordinance allowed for the recovery of impact fees against secondary water improvements that had been made. And so we immediately made that cash available for water projects. It released all the restrictions on it, which is why it was very strategic. This was a brilliant move. And so, kudos to the council, all the expert advice that you received to make it now to where you have clear money that could be used for secondary, it could be used for culinary source development. You can use it for, if we're going to use it to do the aquifer replacement that was talked about here, there's upwards of $3 million that could just be used for what the council decides.
So, when you were here before your great adventure, we had a discussion about, possibly using some of that ARPA funds to purchase the land over here. That became a kind of an issue, especially with the idea that the ARPA, the funding should be used for water development. And it can, not so much secondary, but more culinary. So with this, we don't even need to really even consider, we don't even need to use this ARPA funding. We've got enough slack that we can just purchase this land and you know.
Yes, you would.
4 acres and we're good to go.
You just need to remember that that 1 million ARP funds is part of the 2.5 that Curtis.
Yeah, I understand
Okay.
that. Yeah, I understand it. But what I'm saying is, I think there's enough leeway there that we can go ahead and purchase the land without touching the ARPA funding.
And get that ball rolling.
Yeah, there you go.
Mr. Mayor, could I just say one other thing? I mean,
Yeah.
one of the issues with impact fees is, you know, if you're not issuing a lot of building permits, you don't have a lot of impact fees you can collect. And so what was unusual, you know, we've talked about the growth that's occurred rapidly. That in part has opened up the financial resources for us to acquire a lot of impact fees at once and be able to essentially, you know, do some of these projects where in previous years, you know, we just haven't had that much impact fees on hand.
Right,
So it's sort of a combination of growth versus updating our impact fee ordinances that allowed for us to be able to, you know, have the money available and to put it to use.
Very good. Curtis, do you have anything else to?
Just if I can answer any other questions about the status of those funds. I mean, I think it's been managed pretty well, but yeah, there is enough money there for the land purchase and still retaining the integrity of the $1 million of ARPA funds if you want to use it for other purposes. Council, it's fully at the council, and they don't have to be used for water. As far as source development, they don't have any restrictions, but we put them in the water fund, so they have to be used for water. So, but if anybody's concerned that you have to have some sort of ARPA regulation, no, all of the ARPA rules have been satisfied.
Okay.
There's no restrictions that way. It's just what this council decides to use for.
Very good. Okay. I guess we can entertain a motion for resolution number 23-10.
Mayor, I'll make a motion this evening that we adopt resolution number 23-10.
Okay, been moved by Connie. Can I have a second?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Lyle Vance. Let's start on Wes's side this time. Wes?
West side.
Connie Archibald, aye.
Lyle Vance, aye.
Sean, can I ask a question before I answer on this? I remember something you taught me a long time ago is that we can't handcuff future city councils in some of our decisions. If there's no end date on this, isn't that what we're doing in a sense?
No, I mean, in the sense that, I mean, they can make a council or two into the future could make a decision how to appropriate those funds in the future.
It leaves the door open, in my mind, that they can head any direction they want to head.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, Brett,
Rick, aye.
Motion passes. Thank you, everybody. That was a good discussion, and we appreciate Curtis and Sean and everybody else for all the hard work that helping us find. It's always fun to find these things, so appreciate it very much.
Are there any other funds that we're unaware of?
Yeah.
You know, you took out all the couch cushions here, so I haven't been searching there for the spare change. So.
All right.
I mean, we're going to be talking about potentially, you know, increasing real estate taxes, and if there's any money sitting around in the funds like that we're unaware of, it'd be good to know.
Yeah.
especially
no
for
kidding.
police and firemen.
Yeah.
Yes.
No kidding.
If you want me to address that, I just will real quick.
Sure.
If that's okay. Because you bring up a really good question. If we stay right there on that page 19, and what I'd like to focus on is the restricted line there towards the bottom. It's like the third line up from the bottom, it says restricted. You'll see there's no funds restricted for water. That was where we had impact fees that were previously restricted. You'll also see because of the sewer expansion that we did, the sewer treatment plant improvements that we did, those funds have all been spent out as well for impact fees. They were all impact fee. So as far as looking for impact fees or things that we could use, there are ways, those are all been spent. The storm drain fund has roughly not quite 300,000 in there. That's restricted for storm drain improvements. Now, that's based off of the capital facilities plan. And that is an area where funds may be used to help with some capacity issues there. The non-major fund, it's a technical term. It's the sewer fund. It's for the sewer collection system. That one has about 216. Now, that one is, if I remember right, is going to be using some of those funds for the project that we just bid on, the Main Street deal. So those ones are in the fiscal year 23 budget to be used. So those will go away. If I remember right, Sean, there's also a storm drain project that we had in 23 that we were using the storm drain funds? I can't remember if it was there or if it.
6 North?
6 North? Still not.
To go into the Mlad River, the drain.
Oh, yeah, but that's not.
That's not this year.
That's not this year.
Maybe
I can't think of any off the top of my
Yeah,
head.
maybe I'm getting confused. Anyway, but those would be the first place to look.
Oh, we purchased, I think it's the property.
Yeah, we purchased the property for the storm drain for the storm drain basin. Yeah, we used that up purchasing the property. So basically all of our impact fees that we've collected off of these last years, the city council's done a great job. They're spent.
That isn't the RFP.
And in some cases, they'll be recovered over
Non-major fund.
future years.
Sewer.
The non-major fund?
Sewer collection,
That's sewer collection, okay.
yeah.
So does unrestricted mean we can use them where we want them if we need to?
Restricted means that they're, unrestricted, those funds can be used for whatever, that they're available.
Under
Now-
those categories.
Under those categories. Now, we are going to start the budget process, and what I do is I go through and look at what we go through for each fund, and then I build in a buffer that says, okay, we want to have this much, so if something breaks, so that we put some contingency in place. I personally am not comfortable, and so I'm gonna put some amount in there that I'm gonna recommend that keeps a buffer, keeps the city healthy, protects the citizens' interests, and then we'll show you the remainder that's available for appropriation for the upcoming budget. So we'll have basically all of that getting ready for those budget discussions. So we've come through that
The
analysis.
next item we needed to kind of go through.
When you look at the fire and EMS, let's just pop back to page 15 really quick. Fire and EMS now this is June 30th, so this is a little bit old. It had about $1 million in it. The constant battle with fire and EMS is we're subject to, we get a lot of Medicare and Medicaid patients that we haul, and the recovery rate on those, I think Shari stepped out, we're analyzing those. It's
40%?
Right.
yeah, it's hovering right around 40%. So that accounts receivable balance is growing on us. As far as we'll collect from Medicare, Medicaid, but we write a chunk of those off. And then the other people that we're trying to collect from, you brought up the Greyhound bus incident. It was fantastic. I am so appreciative that we had people here that could respond so quickly. But it taxes this system, and unfortunately, a lot of those people are going to struggle to pay. And some of those people incurred some pretty hefty ambulance treatments as they're going through. So, it's not uncommon to see an ambulance bill for those types of things of $3,000, $4,000 that's getting billed
So
to
the bus-
insurance.
The trucking, or the busing company, their insurance,
So, if I can
Yeah.
say something on that. So, with regards to that, so what we did, knowing that was gonna be the case, so we submitted all the stuff from the insurance company of the bus. And that's what Shari's using to bill for that one.
Yeah, and we're
I don't know
trying.
how well it's gonna work, but we felt like it was a little bit better option. Given publicity, stuff like that, I think they're gonna be a little more willing to pay. So that's the avenue we pursued with all of the individuals that we transport from that.
But it takes time. I mean, you're in a potential, because they're getting lots of claims. And so it's a battle in there.
So of that 730, 200 of it the bus or 300?
No, this wouldn't even have the bus in it yet, because this is
really?
back to June 30th. That accident just happened, what, 4 months?
12th of December.
December.
Okay.
So if we were to look at today, I think our receivable balance had grown up to like $1 million or something like that. That we're just trying to track people down and do collections. And we're looking at some different options there as to what we can do. But they also don't want you to fund your whole fire department based off of your ambulance billings. And so we're looking at, maybe the general fund should be contributing a little bit more, and what are some options there to help fund our fire department to bring it up to some of the levels that are going to entice people to want to be a chief here. And so we have, some one-time funds in there that we can make investments in, but yeah, it's something to look at for the ongoing revenues as to how much do we commit into that fire fund.
This would
And the
be,
police,
And police, yeah, absolutely.
and police.
we've already discussed this. This would be another positive argument for a regional fire department because, again, it goes back to numbers. And I listened to what Wesley said, and I know there's a debate there, but if it was countywide, then the county would be taxed and assessed, not just Tremont and City, for these losses. Just another argument in the pot.
I'm not gonna take one side or the other. I'm just gonna explain some positive and negatives, if I can, of different districts that I've seen. One of those is representation. If it's a countywide system, how much representation does Tremont City have to make sure that you have coverage here? So one of the interesting things, we're all pretty familiar with Unified Fire. And Unified Fire covered the Salt Lake Valley. They had some stations that were stations where firefighters wanted to go to work, and they had some stations where people didn't want to go to work. And so you have some challenges of your senior people taking the best stations, and your less experienced or your non-compatible staff end up out in the outlying stations that maybe aren't as quite improved. So there's this balance of, do you have say to make sure your station, your area is actually up to snuff to where people want to come work there, and you get the quality people versus the people taking the more city areas or the more common areas. How that assessment is determined, do you have a say in making sure that it's not going to unfairly hit this population? So how that agreement gets structured is should require a lot, from my standpoint, should require a lot of input from the city council, making sure the city interests are protected. There are some advantages. You are pooling resources. But you got to make sure whoever's that governing body is really setting good policies for their employees, because they stop being city employees and they start being this district's employees. And so you want to make sure there's investment in a management team there that's strong and capable. Unfortunately, Unified Fire they haven't set a good example in some of those areas. They've had some upper level management that weren't as reputable as they should be. So there's this balancing act of city control versus putting over to authority. And it's not that one's good or bad. I've pointed out a number of bad instances, but at the same time, they have been able to provide fire service very consistently throughout the Salt Lake area. And in certain extents, it becomes very seamless. How much that is better than interlocals, I'm not going to judge that. But there are some good things on both sides. My biggest thing is be aware of what you're entering into. Make sure you understand the reputation, who's actually evaluating management, making sure that things are really functioning. I'm not an expert on fire departments. I'm going to defer here. But I see some really good things in the Tremont area, but I don't know. But this fund is functioning solid. If you look at page 17, you'll see that we're actually able to grow fund balance. Go to the third line up from the bottom. We were able to grow fund balance with the transfer in but by about 662,000. Now we got a fire truck that we're trying to save up to purchase 4 out of this fund. So there's some strategic ideas of what that money's being used for, but there's also a little bit of money there that can be used to fund some personnel improvements and invest in the personal infrastructure, not just the capital infrastructure. So there's some availability there.
Thanks.
Glad to.
Thanks, Curtis. We appreciate you coming to spend the evening with us here tonight and explain all this to us. Thank you. Okay, discussion and consideration of adopting resolution number 23-04, amending the Tremont City annual implementation budget 2022 to 2023, the general fund, capital funds, enterprise funds, and special funds for the period commencing July 1, 2022 and ending July 30, 2023. Mark?
So this is a continuation of the discussion we were having on January 3rd. I didn't change anything really in here other than in the water fund, so in Fund 51, the water fund. The new development there was the down payment for the consultants that we talked about earlier today. So half of that would be this fiscal year, and then the other half would be put in the budget during the budgeting process for next fiscal year. So these are budget amendments for this current fiscal year, and we open the budget every, 2 or 3 times a year for unforeseen circumstances or some purchases that we did not expect during the year. So I don't know if we want to go through each one of them, or if you have certain questions, or if you feel comfortable. I do want to highlight the very bottom one as an option, just because of personnel. We want to make sure that the council's aware that the personnel is ongoing. Everything above the option A is a one-time purchase or capital purchase that we can absorb with our fund balances in each one of those different funds. As Curtis was talking about in the fire fund, to make the fire department more administratively pleasing for future fire chiefs. And one of the recommendations from our previous fire chief was to hire 3 shift captains so that they have 24-hour coverage, 4 people on a shift instead of 3 people. That would allow them to have 2 different crews running if they have two separate calls without calling anybody on call at that point in time. And so the total annually, this was an estimate from Chief Lacroix, was $330,000, about $110,000 each captain. And that's for their benefits and their salaries. We had an ambulance scheduled to purchase this year in the budget. However, with timing on when that ambulance is available, it will not be available this year for sure. So I just backed that ambulance out and figured that if we were to hire 3 captains this fiscal year, it would probably be about 25% of or it'd be the last quarter of the year. And so that's where we get the $71,900 that would be for 1 quarter of 3 chiefs or captains, sorry.
That would be 4 per shift? 4 people per shift?
For station at the station.
Okay.
24/7.
So we're gonna add 1 more person, and they'll run as well as,
Yeah, so what that really does is it gives us the opportunity to run 2 different crews, 2 different locations, but it will alleviate any future, like he says, help the future chief by relieving some of those administrative duties to where he can focus more on kind of where does the department need to go from here, rather than just putting out literal fires, within paperwork and stuff like that, so.
So if I can summarize real quick, we have a $67,000 increase in the general fund and 9,000 in food. Well, in the food things.
Yeah, and the food pantry, that's a grant for revenue, so that's not.
So that's covered.
So that's covered.
Okay,
Mhm.
and then the fire EMS, we had 33,000 in there. That's an addition.
For the radios, yeah.
Okay.
So that's.
And then the 564, we figured that out with the money that's coming from that water fund.
Mhm.
And then the 225 is budgeted money that they had budgeted and we're going to spend anyway in that.
We had budgeted 300,000, but the cost estimate came in at 525.
Okay, so it's an additional two.
So that would be an additional, but we do have.
That's in the water fund.
Mhm. And that'd be a one-time purchase.
Wastewater.
Or treatment fund. That one's in the treatment fund, 52.
I like water everything, you know.
That's correct, yes, all of that.
And on top of that, we're committing another 310,000 annually out of future budgets.
So that would be the personnel option. That would be within this. And that would be out of, the fire and EMS, but as Curtis said, we added 300,000, but I think we transferred over 260,000 from the general fund. So really, the fire fund made. 660.
And I see the need of it, and so don't get me wrong there, okay? Where I'm headed with this is we also need policemen, and we need other things, and so I can't see the whole picture. And that's what's got me a little concerned. If we pass this now we're gonna be hit with another picture, and then another one, and that's what's got me the stressing right now. What's the total picture that we're looking at? That's what I'm concerned about.
Didn't we ask or talk about asking department heads for just what would you like in the next 5 years?
5-year plan.
We did, and I've received all of that. And so for the next fiscal year budget, I'm going to come with, the personnel issues that we're seeing, the whole picture, as you said.
For the whole city.
For the whole city, correct.
And I would be more
That-
we need to move on this
Yeah,
option
that's
B,
what
I
I'm-
understand. But I would be more comfortable knowing that information before I made that decision personally on the fire captains. I wish we could just take care of everyone, and we may have to prioritize, I understand that. But boy, if we need $5 million for new employees next year, I guess we need it, but it'd be nice to know it. That's how I feel. I don't know how you guys feel.
See, I think our budget year is gonna about be over. This should be the last thing.
It'll be over
Like
in,
we
We'll do this one, and we'll probably do, just in case, if there's an emergency or something in May or June, we'll do one more.
Yeah, I was going to say, Mr. Mayor.
June.
Yeah.
I mean, Brett is right. There's a lot of needs. We talk about planning. That's a department where we don't have anyone. And it's a need that's in a growing community that we're going to have to staff. And so we also talk about police and so, I think if you could delay making this decision for a few months. Typically, we don't like to increase staffing in the middle of the budget year because it does create a little bit of a problem, I think, going forward. So if you want to, you could table that element and we could pick it up in the, maybe in another budget amendment if needed. One of the things we were trying to accomplish is just look at what the resources were. We know that's a deficiency that is there. And as we start talking about staffing and as we start looking at hiring a chief, that's one of the needs that they're going to have is some adequate staffing, more than they currently have. So that was sort of the reason why we were thinking about trying to include it now. But it's going to take us several months to get through the chief's recruitment process. So, concurrent with that.
That's kind of a question I guess I have for Chris. We've sort of talked about it maybe taking 90 days to get, to resubmit the request for fire chief and go through the interview process and everything else. So that might take, let's just say 90 days. That gets us pretty dang close to the new budget year kind of a thing. And I've heard it, I'd just like to get your opinion on this. We could either sort of get the captains, hire the captains now, or then I've also heard the argument, well, maybe what we better do is wait until we get a fire chief and let that person hire the captains. I'd just like to know what your thoughts are on that.
So when you bring in a new chief, it doesn't matter if they've had 20, 30, 40 years at another department or 3 different departments that are somewhat similar to what we've got. The problem is the dynamics of how this department works with the relationship between the full-time, the part-time, and the volunteers. So when you bring in a new person like that, it's a little bit overwhelming for them. And if you were to put the captains or hiring of the captains in the hands of that person who doesn't really understand the dynamics of how the department works, I think you're gonna run into some issues in trying to find the best fit. So as we look out and we try to hire those captains, we wanna make sure that they're a good fit for where we're going in the future. So we need to keep that in mind that
Okay.
if you bring in somebody new who doesn't understand the dynamics.
Makes sense to me.
They might take it in a complete different direction or backwards of where we need to go.
Okay.
So just keep that in the back of your
All right.
mind.
Mr. Mayor, one other thing that just occurred to me as I was thinking through where these funds are coming from, and as we've talked about with the fire fund, most of the revenues coming from EMS, ambulance fees, and Curtis has to report annually to the state about how the fees that we collect, equally match or try to match essentially our expenditures. And the reason why we have full-time staffing in the fire department is purely because of the volume of EMS calls. And so when we sat down and talked about it several months ago, the analysis of can we afford these captains was based upon EMS revenues, not general fund revenues per se. We have been transferring general fund revenues, trying to make it equal to the fire department's operating expenses. And when I say fire department, there's several departmental expense accounts within that budget. You have the non-departmental, you have the fire, and you have the EMS. And so the general fund's been trying to move money over equal to the fire department or fire expenditure account. So, my understanding based on what Curtis, was as analysis is that we had money to hire captains based upon EMS, revenues, and I don't know if you can affirm that, Curtis, or
Plus the
or
310 each year. That we just need to make sure we have enough funding in there for each year, not just 76 or whatever thousand this year.
Exactly. And that was one of my major concerns when I was first looking at it is, do we have enough to handle what we're trying to accomplish here? So if I just look at last year, this year's budget is going to be somewhat similar-ish. Page 17. If you go just to about 3/4 of the way down the page, there's excess of revenues over expenditures. You go to the fire EMS column, you're going to see it's just shy of $400,000. So when they came and said, can we absorb 310 into this? My answer is, yes, we can. It doesn't leave us very much cushion. And so that transfer to cover the fire area, that consistency of the 260-ish thousand, becomes critical to make sure it's building up reserves to replace ambulances, to replace fire trucks and stuff like that. But for operationally, yes, we can absorb that.
Can we, in my mind, I kind of wonder a little bit about, Sean mentions the majority of this money coming from EMS. Would it be more prudent for us to maybe a proportional sort of a thing where you have the fire fund, the fire portion of it coming from the general fund, and then the EMS portion of it coming from, from revenue that they generate. Does that make sense? I mean,
Yeah.
can it be sort of a proportional sort of a thing?
It can. This is where the city council has quite a bit of discretion because, the general fund revenues typically don't come with restrictions to it. Their sales tax, property tax, those types of monies. And so the amount of transfer coming from the general fund can be increased. It could be decreased based off of, how the council wants to support this fire and EMS. What we've worked out for the reporting to the state, and the state analyzes, has us submit this report every year. But what we've worked out is when there's a ambulance call, when there's some sort of incident that requires an ambulance to go out, an accident, something like that, the practice, and correct me if I'm wrong, is to send a fire truck out. So you send an ambulance and a fire truck out. Many times there's needs for those. And so what we've done is said, okay, for all EMS calls, we're gonna track when they're sending an ambulance and a fire truck, and we track those, and then those costs get allocated to this ambulance report. So even though we have stuff that's tracked as fire and there may be fire department salaries, we allocate a portion of those into this EMS report to determine, are we spending enough EMS? Now that's only for the state's purposes to analyze it. That's just one way to look at it. But the fact of the matter is there's a baseline level of service where you gotta have firemen in station ready to respond to any of these. And we've talked about some of the critical fires that have happened over the last few decades. And so that's a level that I personally feel that there's a level there that the city should set and say, yes, this is what the city's committing to make sure we have a good, solid fire force. And then we can make the numbers work for, making sure the fund stays healthy as well and not overcommitting to ongoing expenditures. I mean, I'm very sympathetic to what you're saying, Brett, and that's what I analyze. Councilman Rhodey, sorry. I'm very sympathetic to that. I'm constantly looking at our ongoing cost versus our ongoing revenues. And that's why I got to where I was comfortable with the ongoing cost.
Well, okay. Thank you. If the fund is able to, if it's covering itself, then I'm fine with that. I'm fine with it. Now, and please, the firemen need to know that we're total support of them. We're not debating anything about that. Okay, they shouldn't feel that way. Our safety personnel are vital.
Well, the way I look at it, it's like this, it's like an insurance policy, right? Whether it's your home or your auto, right? For your family, you have to figure out what premiums and all of that stuff that you need to get set for your budget. So you might have a brand new vehicle that you gotta have full coverage on. You might have an older vehicle that's worth a lot of money, but it's paid for, and you might just need liability, or you might choose full coverage. But you make those decisions based on, how your budget is and what you feel is comfortable. So I wanna make sure I have enough coverage for all of my vehicles so that if anything ever happened, I'm good, I'm covered, and that coverage is related to the coverage of the city, right?
Yeah.
We wanna make sure that we're right-sizing the department to fulfill the needs for any response. So you don't wanna have a fire department that's overly staffed, that we're taxing the residents and citizens of Tremont into an enormous amount that's not necessary, but we wanna try to right-size it, and I think this is kind of right-sizing that for that insurance policy.
Okay. Well, Mayor, I'll go ahead and make a motion.
Okay.
I need to,
Okay.
before we leave this, one more question. We need to see the whole picture. I need to elaborate on it just a little bit, and I know we're driving the stakes in pretty deep. What's the fiscal strategy here in meeting truth and taxation? I mean, if we have to look, at increasing taxes and that type of stuff, our budget gets done, a new budget starts July 1st. So by that point, July 1st, don't we know what we're gonna need or what we're short at that point by July 1st?
Well, yeah, there's a couple of deadlines, and I think we'll know before July 1st if we need to increase taxes. In fact, I think in June, end of May or beginning of June sometime, maybe mid-June, when they come out with the truth in taxation, that's when we sort of make the declaration officially if we're going to increase taxes or not. But
Is it in July when that happens?
no, I think it's June, like the first 2 weeks in June.
We need to know the whole picture before we get, then you feel strong-armed into voting for stuff. You know what I mean?
Sure,
When
we
you get
don't-
all this information at the last second, we need to know what's going on before we get to that point. And we're already getting to that point if it's going to be happening in June.
Yeah, and I have a pretty good draft budget. We're working on the personnel so that we know kind of status quo and then what the department heads are asking for, like Wes had mentioned. I think we're going to be a month and a half or 2 months ahead of schedule what we were last year. So we're moving along. There's a few hard parts on personnel because health insurance doesn't come out until April. And a few things that really have a sway in the budget, but we're working on getting it together for the whole picture.
And you can strategize that over 5 years or whatnot, saying,
Yeah,
you do
we
it
can.
and you build it so that we can at least know.
We have a 5-year. We're gonna for sure put the priorities for next year, and then the next 4 years. These could adjust in years, knowing that we can't make a decision this year for something 5 years out.
So I know one of the goals that we talked about was coming to the council with a vision, a plan, and doing that as early on, and then having enough time for the council to really strategize and communicate vision what we want to have happen. The first part of May, I think it's set for the first meeting in May, you have to adopt a tentative budget. And there's going to be indications there, Councilman Vance, of whether or not some sort of tax is going to be needed to be considered, or how are we going to fund this vision? So I think we'll have a lot of our first vision by May.
And the nice thing,
May. And then in June, you start finalizing that out and making the critical
I mean, you
decisions.
start talking about futuristic stuff, and right now, we're just scrambling, trying to keep to par, you know what I mean? Trying to keep staffed, the infrastructure, the city streets. I mean, I could see a lot of things not heading the right direction. So, I mean, my idea is to keep things going, at least level, let alone increasing.
Yeah, and Mark has done quite a bit of work. I mean, he's been purely, I shouldn't say purely, but as far as his focus has been on the budget. And so the hard part, he has a pretty good tentative budget, and we're trying to wrap up our capital improvement plan and show that to you, which includes what Curtis is recommending as appropriations that are available to be made in this upcoming fiscal year. So things are moving along. I would think in the next council meeting or two, we'll at least have some things to show you and have those beginning conversations.
Good.
Yeah, I'm
ready to go?
ready to go, yeah. I make a motion that we adopt resolution number 2304 as it's been written and discussed.
I'll second it.
Been moved by Brett and seconded by Wes that we adopt resolution number 23-04. Rick?
Rick, I.
Brett, aye.
Lyle Vance, aye.
Connie Archibald, aye.
Wes, aye.
Motion passes. Thank you, everybody. Let's see, discussion and consideration of disposing of a 1996 Ford ambulance.
I don't know what you're gonna say about it.
We don't need it. It's taking up space. So this ambulance was, I guess, kind of given to the police department a few years ago as an incident command vehicle. We haven't used it once. It's just sits there. In the winter, it's hard to start. If it will start. Anyway, there's other options for us, and we just would like to kind of get rid of it. And there's actually quite a market for these ambulances. I guess the van life people like them. And so we just try to sell it, so.
Fire extinguisher guys like them.
Yep.
Good
A
idea.
lot.
You're just going to just put it out there and,
We've actually had people contact us, say, hey, I understand when you have this ambulance, we'd like to buy it. They're trying to lowball
How
us
many
a little
miles
bit.
on it?
80,000.
Wow.
Rough miles.
Rough miles, hard 80.
Rough mile. I put some of them rough miles.
I say police miles, you double it. I imagine these guys triple it because they're always going, you know, so.
all
So
right.
what do we need to do?
I would just consider it.
it
I think
out
we
on
just make a
bids?
motion that it would allow,
Can
Yeah,
I
I'm
come and say,
considering-
I'll give you 500 and somebody else come say, I'll give, how you gonna do the bid
I'm
process?
even KSL, there, what's the site that, Gov Deals?
Online auction, that a lot of people.
We just gotta, I mean, everything that we usually get rid of at Public Works goes right to Nelson Metal.
Lynn's old truck, we put on GovDeals, and I think it got like $3,500 or
Really?
something, and it didn't have a bad.
These-
Well, Mark will help you get it on there.
These are, I've been seeing ones that are about 10 years older, that are going for $12,000-$15,000. So I'm thinking 6,000 or 8,000 for this one.
And I vote we give the money back to the police department and let Chief Cordova
Absolutely.
do something special with that money.
there you go.
Just my,
I'll just jump in here. He's absolutely right. The price of vehicles like that has skyrocketed recently for used ones, just because the construction schedule for new ones got pushed out 2 years because of chip shortages and things like that in the new car market. And these are built on typically like a Ford frame, body on chassis type thing. And so, yeah, the used market for this is skyrocketed. I wouldn't be surprised if you got over 10,000.
what you gonna buy, Chief?
You want to make a motion on that?
I will, I'll make a motion that we
Dispose.
dispose of that, leave it in Mark's and Chief Cordova's and Brian's hands.
Okay.
And the police get the money from the
From the revenue?
revenue.
I'll
to
second
put back
that.
into their own fund.
All right, so moved by, motioned, I wouldn't say moved, motioned by Wes and seconded by Connie that we go ahead and dispose of this ambulance and the proceeds go to the police department. Get that right?
Yep.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Oh,
What were you gonna say,
Did you
Curtis?
oppose?
I just want to make sure the council understands that we're gonna have to report it that way in the financials.
Yeah, that's why I don't think we should.
And you're gonna have to clarify,
Yeah.
and we're gonna have to specifically
Okay.
appropriate that. I'm just telling you, if you make, it's fine to make that decision, it really is, but you're gonna have to come back through and specifically appropriate that money out to use on a specific line within the police department.
It'll go into the general fund and then we turn around and,
And there is no
Is that right?
special bank account that they can just put this into. It's gonna be put on the financials and sit there until the council says, we're spending this money for the police purposes and here's the line.
is that all right?
Well,
Sure.
it's his motion. I think it
Well,
should
no,
just go into the.
I feel that's good, because if Chief Cordova says, if we get 15,000 of it, and he says, I need 15,000 for vests and helmets, that money just kinda goes. Earmarked, but we gotta do it the way that he says, Curtis says.
Okay.
I don't want to see it go back into the.
Can you see those gears grind? He's already spent the money.
That's true. Adam's got me there.
There you
At
go.
the same time, I don't want to put you guys in a position, so if we have to logistically go to a general fund, and figure it out, I'm okay with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's gonna be better for the books?
I will do it however the council wants. I just want to make sure you understand the decision. That's my only job.
Put it in the general fund and then Chief Cordova can.
Earmark it that way.
The easy way, is just let it flow and we'll bring it, we'll budget it into the council anyway, but we won't have to make it specifically come back. It'll make it a little bit easier on you, but I really can do it any way you want. I just want to make sure we communicate.
Okay. All right. Do we all understand enough that we can, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Of what?
So we're going to dispose of.
Do what Curtis says.
We're going to dispose of the ambulance. The money's going to go into the general fund.
Okay.
And then we're going to earmark it for the police to use for stuff.
We're not gonna earmark it, it's just,
It's gonna go in the general
it's gonna
fund.
go in the general
General
fund.
fund.
And we'll know that.
But it's gonna be earmarked for them to.
When you
use.
earmark it, you have to,
Mentally, he's,
Not mentally earmarked.
yeah, there's no earmark.
General fund.
There can't be an earmark, or he has to
We're
put
not
it in the
Congress.
books.
Okay, all right. We just know. How's that?
I'll remind you, don't worry.
So make your motion again.
Okay,
Wes.
start all over. Start all over.
Got to start all over? I make a motion that we dispose of that ambulance and the money shall be put into the general fund and we'll just go from there.
Perfect.
Good job.
I second it.
Moved by Wes and seconded by Brett and Connie. All in favor?
Aye.
But the incentive is to get as much as you can out of that, because it, you know,
Right.
that's right.
All right. Let's, let's kind of breeze through some of this other stuff. What we kind of thought is, if you have any questions on the, any of those items under city administration reports and comments, we've kind of talked about the, some of this. Sean, we talked about the signal.
the only, Mr. Mayor, the only thing I'd bring to your attention if I could, and
Sarah.
leave it at that, is Council Member Vance asked about, and others, we've been talking about how can we work with the county and the health department to try to affect growth patterns that don't inhibit our ability to provide service as the city continues to annex. And so the county approved an ordinance that essentially, and if the language is actually in your packet, but essentially requires that any development that's being proposed in the county within our declared annexation areas would come to the city first for annexation. So they would need to make a petition to be annexed to the city, and then the city would evaluate, the ability to provide services. So it's a step
This
in
is
the
an
right
effort
direction.
to sort of, the idea of the septic tanks and so forth. This kind of gets around that issue. And so we're kind of within a certain distance, depending on how large the subdivision is how many feet away they've got to be able to.
Well, that was the health department initiative, and I'm not sure, it sounds like that.
Anything to do with this?
Yeah, this is a little different, and so, we could take time, but I'm not sure we should. But I just want you to know that city staff has followed that through, and the county commission has approved an ordinance, and it's in your packet, what that draft language looks like, or what essentially the approved language is now. And so you can read it, and if you have questions, we can talk about it. But we'll continue to work. I feel like we still need to work with the health department and work with them on trying to get some ordinance in place, that deals with septic tanks.
It's moving in the right direction. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see. Department head reports. Chris, do you have anything additional that you wanted to add?
Just that we got our exhaust system installed. It's up and running. It seems to be working pretty well. I think our folks really enjoy it. Not having to breathe in all the exhaust in this station, and all of our ambulances. I can't remember if I brought that up, but those all now have the power lifts so that our folks aren't having to lift patients in and out of the ambulances.
If you get a chance, go over there and beat on the door, catch their attention, and have them show you them things.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
It all is pretty neat.
Yeah.
Was grant money used for that? That's what I thought.
Okay. Dustin?
No, I've talked to Sean. We do have some updates on our department. It might be more appropriate for a closed session.
Okay.
I do want to commend Chris on following up on all the radio stuff and getting us going on that. We're looking through that. It could save us quite a bit of money and get us new equipment. So hopefully we can figure that out in the next little bit and get those over here. So.
Good, thank you. Sarah, do you want to bring us up to date on Mardi Gras?
In a week and a half,
It is.
as long as it's not too cold, we'll be there.
It's Sarah's birthday today.
Oh,
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Sarah. Yes, we do it.
But yeah, so we'll be at the square. People have been excited about it. I've been talking to a lot of people, and they're just really excited to
Bring it
have
to
something
me.
that's different than what we normally offer, so.
It'll be fun.
I got one guy, I believe, from the fire department, Jeff Jarrow I was talking to. He come from, he knew all about it. I
Oh,
says,
yeah.
Bake a cake, represent the fire department, and be down there.
He knew the whole
He
story.
might do it.
Yeah.
And Scott from the fire department, right, Scott, his name? Yeah.
Oh.
Let's bring beignets, so we got,
I'll bring cookies. That's the best thing I can do. Canned cookies.
yeah, it'll be fun.
Good. Let's see. Julie, do you want to tell us about dogs, cats?
You want our January stats?
Well, just,
They're pretty cool.
it's working.
It's the
We
first
just,
time we've had stats,
All right, so
so.
really quick, here's my.
oh, this, okay.
So we had 13 intakes that came into the shelter. Of those, 5 of them were returned to the owners. 1 was sent to a rescue. 2 of them I have in foster homes. 5 we have currently at the shelter. I have some updates pending, but I'll save those for next month. And the biggest news, 0 euthanized, so.
0 what?
Oh, euthanized.
Oh, good.
Oh, good.
There you go. Council, do you have any reports? Rick, you have anything to share with us tonight?
We're still in line for city.
League of Cities and
League of
Towns?
Cities, right?
Yeah. Now who plans to go? I'm going to go. Are you
I
gonna-
go.
I'm gonna go.
Okay, you guys are going to
I
be
told
out?
Lindsay.
Not going.
No.
Okay, you're out of the
country.
Out of the country, okay.
Oh, don't even.
That's okay. Bad influences on each other, so.
Do you have anything else to share?
The Blues Brothers here will be at it.
I got one thing, Lyle, and I already talked to Chief Cordova about it. If your neighbor's car's parked out there, go ask them to move it during snowstorms. I can take you to, you drove around that day, you seen it.
I know.
If we can get just a little more oomph from your department, we would appreciate it. I could take you around and show you 10 cars that has not moved since last summer. It's been plowed around. And we did tag one. So,
Well, if you shoot me those cars, I'll take care of them.
okay.
Appreciate
What do you
it.
mean by tag? Did you scratch it?
Yep.
Oh.
Not me. We did hit the fender on one. When was the bad storm? Sunday night, Monday night, Saturday night?
Sunday morning.
We
Saturday.
got one
Together,
that was out on the road, but I just have the greatest of faith, have $15,000 worth of faith in you, chief.
That's true.
All right. I just wanted to take, speaking of the storm and all the effort, you guys did a great job of clearing the streets and considering all you had to deal with and.
I mean, that's Paul and Rusty, and I'm only one guy, so.
Well, but you can tell them. We just appreciate all of your efforts. We appreciate what you're doing. This is just a great, just a great city to be a part of and to watch what's happening and all the good things that are going on. We just appreciate it so much. I wish our people that were making public comments would have stayed and listened to the rest of the meeting, and they would have got a lot better feeling for where this city's going. I've had people complaining about, well, we're not being responsible in how we're going about our growth. I think that's absolutely not the truth. I think we were being very responsible in how we're going about doing this, and it bore out with Curtis's report. With that, council, I think we just have one more motion.
Make a motion, we adjourn.
Second.
Moved and seconded, we adjourn. I don't think anybody going to oppose. Thanks, everybody.
Okay, I just just want to make sure I stay on the good side of the police.
It's the one that's been in town,
Also, it's a trade, so here's what.
I didn't think this was gonna be a long meeting.
We went back through, I had to go back and check. Keep going.
That's the longest one or not?
No, I think we've been here